Good afternoon. Welcome to the General Laws and Technology Committee. We're going to get started in a moment, but I just wanted to recap our electronic participation policy. People who have signed up at least a half hour ago to testify on a particular bill will be allowed to testify electronically, but we're going to start by hearing the subcommittee report from the Gaming Subcommittee, and we're not going to take new testimony on the bills that were heard yesterday. We will get a summary of the bills from the subcommittee chair, and if committee members have questions, they can ask them, but we're not going to take new testimony on those bills because they were heard yesterday. With that, I do have several bills, though, that need to go by for the day. I would entertain a motion to take Senate Bill 122, Senate Bill 247, Senate Bill 388, and Senate Bill 496 by for the day. Is there a second to that? Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that those four bills, 122, 247, 388, and 496, go by for the day. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, this will be, I didn't do a roll call. Let's do a roll call first, sorry. Okay,
You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's reconsider that last motion. I'll entertain a motion for 122, 247, 388, and 496 to go by for the day.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those bills are by for the day. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Senator McPike, the chair of the Gaming Subcommittee, and ask him to walk through in order the bills that were considered yesterday and the report, perhaps give a little summary of the bill for those that weren't here, and what the result was of the committee's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subcommittee met yesterday, and I appreciate the subcommittee members' time and attention to the bills. We went through 14 bills over a little bit longer than an hour and 45 minutes. The first bill, the committee addressed Senate Bill 124, Senator Van Valkenburg. What it would do is revise our current code that permits sports betting in Virginia to include Virginia college sports. As a reminder, this provision does not include individual player performance, but overall game bets. Some of the committee's discussion revolved around the fact that, frankly, many of our kids in colleges go to other states where you can bet on them, but and other kids from other states come to here, you can't bet on them. It's a little bit of mix. This version of this passed the Senate several years ago. It was rejected by the House. The committee recommended reporting six ayes, 1 nay, 1 abstention, and I move the bill report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we'll vote.
And re-refer to finance.
Okay, we'll vote on report and we refer to finance of SB 124 unless there's any questions from committee members. Okay, we can open the roll.
Carol Foy's proxy.
Ayes 12, noes 2, 1 abstention.
Okay, what's your next bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next bill is Senate Bill 307. We did have a substitute, and I'd move the substitute be adopted. Second.
Okay. This bill was requested by Finance also. So if we're to make a motion today, well, why don't you report on it first and what the subcommittee considered?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we can take a vote to get the substitute before the committee.
Okay, let's, all in favor of adopting the substitute, we'll say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a brief summary, the substitute essentially provided the framework for skill and electronic gaming in ABC licensed facilities. It provided essentially the same framework that was adopted under the regs for the ABC with the $1,200 flat fee, transitioning over to lottery with a more robust framework in 2025, including protections for underage gaming, player card system, includes a provision for ensuring a three-tier, or basically each license wouldn't overlap between license holders, the manufacturer, the operator, and the store locations. provides a 35% tax rate in the final version, Mr. Chairman. Also, by providing the player card, it would provide a means of which we could address things that have been discussed in committee, which was to prevent those that have signed up to be precluded from gaming and gambling. They're on the problem gaming list and would be excluded from having a player card. So it's addressing several ideas and issues that came up, Mr. Chairman. Okay. And I move that it be referred to Senate Finance.
Well, the motion would be to report and refer. The subcommittee did not have a recommendation on the bill. Is there, and just to clarify, this would allow up to 5 electronic gaming devices in an ABC licensed restaurant and 10 in a truck stop. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Okay. And we'll take this one by temporarily and go through the other ones, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Senate Bill.
Senator Rouse.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, on this bill that was heard in subcommittee, what was the recommendation from the subcommittee? I'm not seeing one.
There was no recommendation because it was passed by for the day at the request of the sponsor.
So is it, Mr. Chairman, is it, I know you made a point that all gaming bills go through subcommittee. So is it, it's basically, is this bypassing that, the subcommittee without a recommendation?
Well, the subcommittee didn't, the sponsor requested go by for the day.
So will it be heard in subcommittee again, Mr. Chairman?
That's up to the members of the subcommittee. It can either be heard in the subcommittee with a recommendation, but if there was a thorough discussion, but not a vote.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I recognize all the other gaming bills has a recommendation from the subcommittee except this one. So I would, I don't know why, this one get a recommendation from the subcommittee.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we have had this precedent in the past where there were still discussions ongoing and bills that have come out of subcommittee without a recommendation.
Let's take this by temporarily, if that's okay, and we'll come back to it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next was Senate Bill 344 from Senator Reeves. This was a long working bill to work through some of the charitable organization concerns over the last couple of years. The Senator has worked collaboratively with many different groups and organizations to get to this bill. And Mr. Chairman, the Senator does have an amendment to offer to the committee. Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is actually an amendment in the nature of substitute due to the language change. But yesterday, Mr. Chairman, we heard one person didn't like Section 17 of the original bill, which was trying to figure out a bathroom situation in one of our charitable gaming establishments. What we tried to do was to reach consensus with that person. All we've done in the bill is refer that regulatory authority back to VDAX rather than the General Assembly trying to decide how the bathrooms are supposed to be arranged in charitable gaming facilities. So that's what the amendment does. And if the clerk would like to clarify it even further, but that's the gist of the correction, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I move the amendment be adopted.
Second.
Okay. The motion is second on adopting the amendment. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that Senate Bill 344 was recommended reporting unanimous 8-0. And I move that the bill report and be referred to Senate Finance as amended.
Okay. All in favor? Is there a second there?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of was it adopt and refer, recommend reporting and refer to Senate Finance? Senate Bill 344 will please vote aye. Those opposed will vote no.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay. Next, I believe you have Senate Bill 345.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 345, Senator Reeves has also heard. What it does, Mr. Chairman, is place essentially a year limit, 3-year limit on casino referendums. If they fail, they have to go through a 3-year time period before being reconsidered. Senator Reeves, do you want to speak to that at all? Does that summarize it well?
Mr. Chairman, I think you've summarized it. What this prevents from happening is what happened to Richmond this year and the last year, where the voters said no, They spent a bunch of money. The voters again said no, and it just prevents folks from trying to buy their votes to get something passed when clearly the citizens of the jurisdiction have voted they don't want it. So this falls directly in line with what we require of our historical horse racing. So we have consistent policy throughout all these type of gaming entities.
Thank you. So the committee recommended reporting on a 7-1-0 vote and move that Senate Bill 345 be reported and re-referred to the Senate Finance.
Okay, all in favor of Senate Bill 345 will vote aye on the electronic voting board, and those opposed vote no.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next up, we had Senate Bill,
I think you had 397 next. 348 was rolled into 397.
Yep, so 348 was rolled in to Senate Bill 397, and so move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of rolling 348 into 397, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, it's a recorded vote, I'm sorry.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Senate Bill 397, Senator Eben, now rolled also the same concept of 348, basically provides information of and posting of illegal gaming tip line, combining a number of different efforts to make sure that it is posted in a conspicuous place, as if I can say that word. It is a struggle. On the premise, and a sign that provides the toll-free number for those tip lines, Mr. Chairman. That bill will recommend reporting on an unanimous 8-0 vote, and so move.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 397 be reported. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, and I believe that Senate Bill 426 from Senator Deeds was passed by for the day, so perhaps there'll be a future meeting.
That's correct. The next bill, Senate Bill 429 from Senator Van Valkenburg, was requested to be stricken by the patron, and so move.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to honor the patron's request to strike Senate Bill 429. All in favor, please vote aye. Opposed, vote no.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 540, Senator Bagby. What it does is provide an exemption in terms of how data is collected and used within the lottery system. There's a current prohibition. This removes that prohibition to help clean up the code and sort of update how data is stored across multiple jurisdictions to make sure that those collaborating with lottery data do not get caught up within this current code section. It recommended reporting on an 8-0 vote, Mr. Chairman, and I so move and recommend re-reporting to Senate Finance.
Okay, all in favor of reporting Senate Bill 540 from Senator Bagby will vote aye. Those opposed vote no.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next bill was Senate Bill 541, Senator Bagby. Essentially what the bill did was remove City of Richmond as an eligible host city for a casino. That bill recommended reporting on an 8-0 vote, and I move the bill report and be re-referred to Senate Finance.
Okay, Senate Bill 541, all in favor of reporting that will vote aye. Reporting and referring to Finance, vote aye.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next bill heard was Senate Bill 628, Senator Aird. What this bill does is provide an eligible host city for a gaming casino location in the city of Petersburg. That bill recommended reporting on a 7-1-0 vote, and I move that the bill report and be re-referred to Senate Finance.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion, a second. Senator Aird, do we need to add anything, or are you okay? Okay. Okay, so all in favor of Senate Bill 628 being recommended for reporting and referred to finance, please vote aye.
Ayes 13, noes 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next bill heard was Senate Bill 675, Senator Marsden, for adding a eligible location in Fairfax County for a casino, describing essentially areas within the bill, roughly outside 495 in roughly the Tyson's Corner area of Fairfax County. There was a substitute offered, and I'd move the substitute.
Okay, all in favor of adopting the substitute, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Why don't you explain the bill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And so, having explained the bill's recommended reporting failed on a tie vote of 4-4, and I move that the bill report and be re-referred to finance.
Okay, is there any members of the committee who have questions for Senator McPike about this bill who were not there yesterday? Okay. I understand there people asked me if they could testify today, and I told them we took all our testimony yesterday. So I would just say if there are people here particularly on this bill in support of it, if they want to rise, they could stand, please. Okay. And thank you for being here today. And are there any who would like to express opposition? They can stand as well. Okay. Thank you. I guess we're ready to vote unless there are questions from committee members. So Senate Bill 675, the motion was to recommend reporting and refer to finance. If you're in favor, please vote aye. Opposed, vote no.
Ayes 10, noes 4, 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we heard Senate Bill 689, Senator Craig. We did have a substitute, and I move the substitute.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for the substitute to Senate Bill 689. All in favor of adopting it, please say aye.
Aye. Thank
Any
you, Mr.
opposed? Okay, the substitute's adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the substitute basically adopted the framework from House Bill 1478. What it does is allows cruise ship gaming in offshore waters of the Commonwealth. Essentially, if there's ticketed passengers for an international trip, they can call port to a Virginia port along that process and still game while they're coming in and docked as passengers come in and out through a fee, Mr. Chairman. With the substitute, that would be organized through a lottery, and obviously until the future we organize into a larger gaming commission. And that recommended reporting on a 7-1 to 0 vote, and so move that it be reported and re-referred to Senate Finance.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. And just to be clear, this only allows for gaming on cruise ships that are on their way out or on their way back from an international port. It's not for a boat that's docked to have gaming.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for asking the question and clarifying. It would not be for anybody to just on the side to approach and board the ship just to gamble and then leave the ship. This is for ticketed passengers as cruise ships come into the port and back out. And likewise, if they're traversing up to Baltimore, up to Chesapeake, when they're within Virginia, they could still have that entertainment available to passengers, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so all in favor of Senate Bill 689 being recommended and reported to Senate Finance, vote aye.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And last, we had Senate Bill 694, Senator Stanley. He had requested this bill be continued to 2025, and so move.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of continuing Senate Bill 694 to 2025 will vote aye, please. Opposed, vote no.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Eric, could we refer the last one to finance? Yes, okay, just double check this.
Okay. Thank you.
We can pause for sidebar now, Aaron.
Okay. So we're almost done with our gaming.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Senate Bill 307
yeah,
was,
Senate Bill 307 is the remaining item on the docket. Mr. Chairman, I move that be taken by for the week.
okay, without objection, or do we need to vote on that? We don't need to vote. Okay, all in favor of taking by Senate Bill 307 by for the week will say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that's by for the week. So now we'll get to the remainder of our bills. I've got patrons signed up. I have Senator Favola as the first patron who signed up. Do you want? Okay, or you could come back, whichever you prefer.
Okay, we'll go to the very, very easy one first, Senate Bill 177. There are some line amendments, and I can ask General Counsel to read them. It is a Section 1 bill. The entire reason for this bill is to allow our state psychiatric hospitals to put our nurses on 12-hour shifts, should they ask. A 12-hour shift is a desirable work arrangement for many nurses, and it will help us to actually retain the ones we have and perhaps recruit. And we direct the State Department of Human Resources to come up with a policy to allow us to put our nurses on 12-hour shifts. So that's the intent of the bill. It is a Section 1 bill, but you probably want General Counsel to read the amendment.
Well, Senator, let me just first ask you, did this come from a JLARC report at the request of the Behavioral Health Commission? Is this a recommendation?
That's correct, sir. Yes, thank you for bringing that up.
Okay.
It was a JLARC study and a recommendation from the Behavioral Health Commission.
Okay, and you said there's an amendment?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, does the clerk want to report the amendment, please, or the council?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On line 13, introduced after hospitals, insert to have the option. On line 14, introduced after week, insert in order to allow state hospitals to utilize 12-hour shifts for such staff. And on line 15, introduced after week, insert. The department shall also examine whether this change in policy should be extended to comparable direct care positions at other executive branch agencies to help improve recruitment and retention of critical nursing and other direct care positions experiencing high turnover or vacancy rates.
Okay, are there any questions on the amendment? Is there a motion to adopt the amendment? Okay, it's been moved and second that we adopt the amendment. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Are there those who present today who'd like to speak in favor of this bill? Okay. Anyone here to speak against the bill?
Second.
Okay. Motion and second to report SB 177. Please vote. Oh, to report and refer to finance. I'm sorry.
That shouldn't.
Please vote aye. Excuse me?
I didn't have a fiscal statement.
Well, the finance has requested, and it does involve employee hours, so we're going to send it there if we report. So the motion would be to recommend and report to through finance, and I'd ask the clerk to open the roll on that.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, that reports. Senator Favola, you had another bill?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I draw your attention to Senate Bill 79. And the purpose of this bill is to encourage state buildings and local buildings, if they're going through renovations or building new buildings, to actually have infrastructure in place for renewable energy systems. And there's an amendment in the nature of a substitute, if the committee would so choose to adopt it.
So let's, I'll hear a motion to adopt the amendment in the nature of a substitute. Okay, all in favor of adopting the amendment in the nature of a substitute, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's before us now, Senator Favola.
Okay, so under the building standards for the state, we have, my bill adds a sentence that says includes infrastructure for renewable energy sources and photovoltaic solar panels shall be the primary choice for on-site renewable energy systems. That same language is placed under 15.2, 1804.1, which actually governs local governments, so that exact same language is there. And then I have an enactment clause which directs the Virginia Department of Energy to convene a work group consisting of stakeholders with representation from K through 12 schools and others to come up with strategies for building the infrastructure necessary for renewable energy systems that schools may need to embrace. And the department shall report the work group's findings to the respective committees. General Laws would be one of the committees, House Committee on General Laws, by November 1st, 2024.
And does the substitute still have the language exempting it if the governing body of the locality determines that solar panels are impractical and not cost-effective? That's embedded in the substitute as well?
Yes, that's a
Thank
waiver.
you.
That's a waiver language.
Okay.
And that needs to stay. And the last thing I will just note, Mr. Chairman, is the provisions of my act, which require the infrastructure in the buildings. Nothing would be applied to projects unless the projects are in the design phase on or after January 1, 2025.
Okay, and Senator Pillion asked me to clarify. So if the governing body, Senator Pillion, of the locality determines that solar panels are impractical or not cost-effective, they would not have to engage in this practice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's correct.
Okay. Are there those present who would like to testify in support of this bill? Come forward, please, and introduce yourself if you're in support. And I'd ask that you be brief. We'd like to try and keep it to like just 2 minutes per side if we could. So if you could do it in 30 seconds or about that, would be helpful.
I'll be fast. Dr. Barbara Boardman for the Academy of Pediatrics. We're in support of this bill. We think it would result in schools that are healthier for students and would lead to fewer student absences and higher academic achievement. And we also believe we see patients who are concerned about the issues of climate change, and it would give them a good model of positive change.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Shippey with Sierra Club. We thank the patron for bringing the bill. I think all localities are looking to save money, and many of them are looking to cut their carbon footprint. This bill helps with both, so we hope you'll report it out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Lillian Anderson with Virginia Conservation Network. We're the partnership of 160 organizations across the Commonwealth, and we support this bill.
Thank you for being here.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Blair St. Ledger Olson, Climate Cabinet Action. We support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any present who are in opposition to Senate Bill 79? Okay. And did we have anyone online who has their hands raised who was pre-registered? No? Okay. Thank you. So is there any questions for Senator Favola or a motion? There's a motion to report as, let me just see, this one is also to be referred, so the motion will be to report and refer to Senate Finance, and there's a second to that, so we'll open the board for a vote.
Ayes 13, noes 2.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator.
Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My bill is SB 233, and there is a substitute.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the substitute? Okay, all in favor of adopting the substitute, please vote aye. Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's now before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SB 233 is a bill that we are calling Faith in Housing for the Commonwealth Act. What this bill does is allow our faith organizations, specifically churches or other groups of faith, whether they're mosques or synagogues that own land or property, to be able to use their property for the purposes of providing affordable housing for low-income communities. We know that many of our faith institutions have lots of property here in Virginia, own land and own buildings. Many of these buildings are not being used to their full capacity, and there is a desire among the faith communities to be able to exercise and demonstrate their faith through action. And part of their mission, as many faith communities have testified, is to provide shelter for those in need. The substitute in front of you indicates that any housing developments that do occur will occur on faith land, and that there will be specific measures for the property as it's going to be used to develop housing, that it be dedicated for persons of low income at the levels that are described, and that there also be opportunities to provide support and resources for those communities in the form of child care centers, also in any kind of educational centers that may be used by the residents. Mr. Chair, we have support from many individuals here in the Commonwealth. The Episcopal Diocese of Virginia has shared a letter of support with committee members, and Laura Lafayette, who many of us know quite well, wanted to be here today to speak in support. She unfortunately could not join us because of other work demands, but as a colleague of mine on the Housing Commission, she is very much in strong support of this legislation, and if committee will allow, we have some individuals here who wish to speak in support.
Let's try and limit this to 3 minutes per side. So those who are in support, if you want to come forward, if you could be mindful that there may be others behind you to use your total 3 minutes of support. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sheila Hurley-Hennessy. I am the faith organizer with the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. We are incredibly grateful to the patron for bringing forth this bill. We speak with faith communities all the time who want to use their land for good, who want to live their mission in this way. More than 20 faith communities around Virginia have or are in the process of building affordable housing on their sites. And we had a pastor who, similar to Ms. Lafayette, had to leave because of parish business, but wanted to share a piece of his story that right now his congregation up in Warrenton is trying to develop land for affordable housing for veterans and is encountering pushback because of the local zoning ordinance. With this bill, it would streamline the process for him and for so many other pastors like him. We ask you to support this bill. Thank you.
I understand there are people online waiting to testify too, so please be mindful there's folks behind you, and be brief in your comments if you can.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. My name is Barrett Hardiman. I'm here on behalf of the Commonwealth Housing Coalition, which is a group of grassroots organizations partnered with Housing Opportunities Made Equal. Thank the Senator for bringing this bill. We support it. Obviously, two of the biggest costs in housing construction is time and land, and this will help faith organizations fulfill their missions and by reducing some of those costs. So again, we thank you. We hope you support the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time in the committee. My name is Tony Miller. I'm a community member at St. Elizabeth's Catholic Church here in Highland Park in Richmond, Virginia. We're grateful to be breaking ground soon on some affordable housing, but we support Senator Hashmi for this bill to make it easier for future faith organizations in the Commonwealth to do the same. We support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Melody Hackett with the Legal Aid Justice Center, and we support this bill.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Alex Horwitz, Director of Housing Policy at the Pew Charitable Trusts, in support. We recently have done research on exactly this topic. We see a similar bill passed California and is already gaining widespread support there. We surveyed the American public and did a nationally representative survey on this exact issue. 81% of Americans favored allowing religious nonprofits to build affordable housing on land they own with a simplified permitting process, including 80% of homeowners. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Isabel McLean from Virginia Housing Alliance, and we support this bill.
Benjamin Knotts, Americans for Prosperity, we support this bill. It's basic supply and demand. The demand goes up when you limit the supply. We need to streamline the regulatory process so that we can increase the supply, which will lower the demand and lower costs over time. So we support the bill. Hope you'll consider it.
Thank you. And I think we're down to 7 seconds, but let's let the folks online be very brief. Introduce yourself and your organization, and if you have something compelling that hasn't been said, if you can limit yourself to just a short time, that would be helpful. Oh, okay. Okay, then those opposed to Senate Bill 233, we could start the clock again. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Joe Lurch with the Virginia Association of Counties. We do support working with all landowners on trying to address the affordable housing issue and more housing. We do know of success stories. I have talked to Ms. Hurley about a success story that happened in Arlington where we worked with the church there. Other similar success stories that might be going on in the city of Alexandria. I will point out that, and I just saw the substitute, but I think it does essentially the same thing as the introduced bill. It does create a disconnect in what localities are doing on planning for adequate public facilities. This would mean in any zoning district, if you, by nature of the ownership, by a faith organization or a religious organization, you could buy right to develop these things. And there's concerns about, water, sewer, septic, things of that nature. I'll also just point out one thing. It is a conflict, even though this is written to a different section of code. 15.2.2282 of local government zoning code in the state says regulations to be uniform. It says all zoning regulations shall be uniform for each class or kind of buildings and uses throughout each district. So essentially what you're setting up is a big conflict here. You could have two properties have the same zoning, and by nature of one having a different ownership, it gets a different property rights. And so for these reasons, we do oppose the bill, but we do want to work with the faith organizations and have that conversation because we see that they have a lot of surplus property, and our members will be willing to work with them and try to figure out ways to get them through the development process. So thank you.
Thank you. Please come forward.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Brent McKenzie with the City of Virginia Beach. Likewise, as Joe was saying, we recognize the challenge that is this legislation is trying to get at, but we do have grave concerns over removing local government's ability to decide where housing and affordable housing is built in Virginia Beach. We like to think of ourselves as unique, but I'm sure other localities have similar issues. We have a agricultural zone that the city has decided wants to try to keep agricultural. There are a lot of churches in that area. We are also home to the master jet base where there's a lot of different type of zoning that surrounds there, dealing with crash zones, dealing with noise zones. But through the nature of how the city has developed over the years, there are could be churches in those areas where might not be compatible for affordable housing. So, we think that local government needs to have a role in making these decisions, and for those reasons, we're currently opposed to this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Are there committee members with questions for the patron or for the witnesses?
Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to start with Senator Rouse, and I heard some hands over here. I'll go over there next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any questions. I think I was merely trying to get your attention for Senator Aird.
Thank you, Senator Rouse. You didn't use the list. Mr. Chairman, may I?
Please.
Senator Hashmi, thank you so much for bringing this bill forward. I just had a question for clarification. I tried to quickly look through your text. Are there any guardrails to protect communities that have a plethora of affordable housing already present? In one of my communities, we have over 100 churches, and they do have quite a bit of land. But I want to make sure that in a community where there is already a lot of affordable housing, that we are not all of a sudden saturated with more?
Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Aird, for that question. I think this is a one step forward in helping to address the crisis that we have in housing, particularly for low-income communities. And so, when we talk about affordable housing, that's not necessarily encompassing the severe crisis we have for many individuals and families that simply cannot afford affordable housing. And so this gives opportunities for our faith communities to really try to help those individuals that are in severe need. So the housing development must have dedicated units for extreme low income individuals, and that it is going to follow the guidelines that are established within those areas. We understand the concerns that local government has raised. There are some issues to certainly work out, but I'll just share one anecdote. I was speaking to one faith leader who is trying to address these concerns of crisis in his own backyard, basically, knowing that there are single parents living in a motel across the street from the church property. His church has begun to bring those individuals directly into their church facilities. They're using the chorus room to house single parents and their children, and they would like to have some options in order to address the crisis that they see in their neighborhood. And so really it's a response to direct and very, very local concerns that the institutions would have.
Thank you so much, Senator. Mr. Chairman, follow-up question.
Yes.
So to clarify some of what I heard, I just want to make sure that I'm walking away with the right understanding. Does this take away local authority as it pertains to zoning?
Well, to some degree, yes, because it says on line 25 of the substitute that no locality may require a rezoning. Because the church already is the owner of the property, it may not require. No locality may require rezoning, special exception, special use, or conditional use permit for any housing development that's constructed by a religious organization.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a number of folks in the queue. I'm going to go through the order that they press their buttons. That starts with Senator Rome.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the patron. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would ask the senator on this case. So I have a few questions here. Number one is compliance with actually the chairman's bill from 2020, SB, I think it was 868 for the Virginia Values Act, where we annotated non-discrimination practices in housing. Part of that one said that nothing in this chapter shall prohibit a religious organization, association, or society or any nonprofit institution or organization operated, supervised, or controlled by or in conjunction with religious organization, association, or society from limiting the sale, rental, or occupancy of dwellings that it owns or operates for other than a commercial purpose to persons of the same religion, or from giving preferences to such persons unless membership in such religion is restricted on account of race, color, national origin, sex, elderliness, familial status, sexual orientation, gender identity, status as a veteran, or disability. So the question for the patron is basically, is there anything in this bill that would basically allow the religious organization in this case to either kind of run afoul of what we've already passed here with the Virginia Values Act in 2020, or otherwise run into conflict with that?
I will have to phone a friend on that complex question you have raised, so I'm not sure if any of my colleagues here would be able to address that particular concern.
Very briefly, my understanding is no. This simply allows the faith community to build the affordable housing. The affordable housing would still have to comply with the Virginia Values Act, the Fair Housing Act, all of that. There would be no discrimination based on religion or anything like that.
Or protected class. All right.
Protected class, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, second question.
Senator Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, one of the critiques that I got privately about the bill was the idea of 40 units per acre in this case being considered basically particularly dense. I don't know if it's to the patron, to council. I see some folks in the back who might be able to answer this. What is typical in terms of an apartment construction or an affordable housing construction for number of units per square acre in that case?
Are you asking somebody?
Yeah, basically, I'm
behind
trying
me?
to figure out, does this fall outside of the norm for what is typically allowed in, basically in building a apartment complex, more or less?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Rome. The 40 units per acre was something that we had some concerns with too, and that's why in the substitute we changed it to 150% of the maximum allowed density in the locality. Sorry, my apologies. The 150% of the maximum allowed density in the locality. That way it would be more locality specific. The reason it's 150% for two reasons really. One, in the more rural localities, 150% may actually end up being 1.5 houses, because if you have an acre of property, you only build one house per acre. In the more dense localities, a lot of localities are giving bonus densities for affordable housing, because in order for projects to work, you have to have more units to make the construction of the housing feasible. Otherwise, you can't get it funded. So that doesn't quite answer your question. I don't know if there's anything that's a usual construction or units per acre. It's really on a locality by locality basis.
You're wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess final question just regarding that one in particular. It seems that if we're going to go with the 150% standard here, that if we at the state government level have kind of just like a very far-reaching, one that just kind of sweeps all across, and especially because it's different than what I had read in the introduced version, I guess would either the patron or the witness in this case be able to assuage my concerns here regarding that we're kind of taking away the authority for people who really know this area best, locality to locality, where in a denser area like Manassas Park that I represent, 150 over difference is going to be remarkably different than what this would mean, for example, if one of the churches in northern Haymarket off of Waterfall Road, well, yeah, there's actually one under development, Waterfall Road, if they were to do this. It seems that we could run into a problem of unequal application of the law. And so I was wondering if either of them could address that concern.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rome, I would say that I think that the application would be equal, the outcome would be different, as you have different sizes of properties and different densities in these areas, and what would be appropriate in Manassas Park would probably not be appropriate in Haymarket. But hopefully what we're doing is encouraging the increase of supply of housing. That's really what we need to do, and going at 150% it can be a big leap in some areas, but in those areas you're more likely to have the higher need. And it's a large jump in density, the construction of these affordable housing developments, particularly at the income levels that are in the bill, will require some form of subsidy. They're either low-income housing tax credits, local affordable housing trust funds. So there will be other guardrails that are put on there by different programs that either the state runs or the local government runs.
Okay, Senator Locke is next in the queue.
Mr. Chair, I know it's been 1,000 years since I served in local government, but lines, this is
What's the substitute?
Okay. In the substitute, lines 25 and 26 gave me the most pause. Removing the authority of a local government is very concerning, and local governments need to have some play here. And not giving them any authority is where I'm concerned. With that, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion.
Yes.
And my motion would be that this bill be referred to the Housing Commission with a letter from the chair.
Okay, so I would hear that as a motion to carry over with the letter.
To carry over with a letter from the chair.
And before we have it second, and before we vote, I just want to thank the coalition of people who've worked hard on this legislation. I know we have a housing shortage of over 200,000 homes in Virginia and a crisis for some. But I think that this is a significant change, and I think that we can send the substitute that was adopted to the Housing Commission for them to roll up their sleeves and make sure that we strike the balance between getting housing developed as fast as possible in these circumstances while not totally limiting all local input. So do you have a closing word, Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would just thank Senator Locke for making that motion. I think this is a good opportunity for our Housing Commission and our various stakeholders to come together and to evaluate how we can allow our faith communities to exercise their faith, most particularly in serving those individuals in greatest need. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, with that, unless there's further discussion among the committee members, we'll vote on carrying over SB 233 for the year with a letter to the Housing Commission. We'll open up the roll, please.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Stewart is next, followed by Senator Hackworth. Okay, we'll go to Senator Hackworth, and when Senator Stewart comes, he can get back in the queue. After Senator Hackworth, we have Senator Perry and Senator Deeds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm a lot better looking than Senator Stewart, so thank you.
What bill do you have there?
Don't vote on that, please. Senate Bill 473, if we could take that one up first, please.
Okay, we'll direct our attention to Senate Bill 473 and Senator Hackworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This is a bill that promotes regulatory transparency, and currently only around half of the regulatory actions and no guidance documents are required to go on Town Hall under the Administrative Process Act. This bill would change that, requiring 100% of these actions to appear on Town Hall. Citizens need straightforward access to regulations and guidance documents to understand and to help shape them. There is no fiscal impact on agencies because they're already doing this under Executive Order number 19, and this simply codifies the requirements. And the Virginia Press Association, I think, is here today to support this bill. They would like to come up and speak for it.
Thank you. Those, the Press Association or anyone else in support of this legislation, please come forward.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Amy Perrin-Seibert on behalf of the Virginia Press Association, as well as speaking for Megan Ryan with the Virginia Coalition for Open Government. We both support this bill, and we're happy to have more things that are transparent, and having all the regulatory actions will be great. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Were there others waiting to speak in favor? Anyone speaking against Senate Bill 473? Okay. Are there committee members with questions for Senator Hackworth? Is there a motion?
Lead report.
There's a motion, and is there a second? Okay. Unless there are other questions, we'll open the roll for Senate Bill 473. Oh, and to report and refer to finance, I should say, is the motion. So all in favor, vote aye, and those opposed, vote no.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Senator. Did you have another bill?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It's a Senate Bill 463.
Okay, on the Board of Accountancy.
Yes, correct. So Senate Bill 463 is basically a bill that updates the existing code sections. We have worked with and let's go ahead and move the amendments. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Move the substitutes be agreed to.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to adopt the substitute to Senate Bill 463. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's before us.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So We've worked with the Virginia Society of CPAs, and they are here actually to speak in support of this, but this updates the existing code sections to reflect current CPA industry practices and makes changes to the Virginia Board of Accountancy's authority and processes to improve agency efficiency. So I think they are here to speak in support of this.
Okay, I think members are just reviewing the substitute. Are there do you have witnesses in support?
Yes.
Okay, please join us.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Emily Walker with the Virginia Society of CPAs. This is actually an agency bill that we worked very closely with the Virginia Board of Accountancy on, and so we do fully support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Hi.
Chair and members of the committee, my name is Nancy Glenn. I'm the Executive Director at the Virginia Board of Accountancy, and we support this bill. If
Thank
there's
you.
any questions, please let me know.
Okay. Were there any in opposition to this legislation? Okay. Are members of the committee have any questions? Okay. I believe that Senator Arid had a
Mr.
question.
Chair, I do have a question. I just wanted the patron to clarify why we're removing the requirement for the audit.
So the financial statement audit is a redundancy. We're included with the ACFR, the annual consolidated financial report for the Commonwealth. And the APA also supports the financial statement audit to be removed. We're a low-risk audit, so our audit doesn't even get published until a year after the financial statement close. So there's very little value to it, and it's a redundancy because we're already included in the statewide audit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So you will have to do an audit, just not under this section in that way it's prescribed in the current code.
Yes. So,
Okay.
not to be facetious, but we have to report to a board of 6 CPAs and 1 attorney pretty much every other month. So I feel like we get audited every month. But
Thank you.
yes, so that we'll have an annual statement, but it won't be a GAAP audited statement. Yes. So we will still have financial statements that are reviewed.
Thank you. Okay. So then, is there a motion on Senate Bill 463?
Move to report.
Second. Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. That is some great bathroom reading, Mr. Rouse.
Okay, next we have Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have Senate Bill 415. Ready? Mr. Chairman, this is a bill that actually was recommended by the FOIA Council. And just to give you a very brief background, I don't know how much you all are familiar with the Prince William case, where the folks went to, and I know Senator Locke's very familiar because we discussed it. They went to an NAACP meeting, a board did, Prince William. It was an open meeting, open to the public. It was not closed, but under the statute, and somebody complained. Under the statute, the Supreme Court, I think, correctly determined that they had violated FOIA, although the dissent also correctly said when you apply the language literally, you get absurd results, which ultimately is what happened in that case. But it's made a lot of people uncomfortable about meetings for boards of supervisors. And so what this very simply does is it provides an exception for boards of supervisors that want to go to their county political meeting, not with the intention of discussing public business, but with the intention of discussing their political business. And so in Northern Virginia, everybody's a Democrat, so you got all 5 Democrats in the thing, or 2 have to stand outside of the room, which is just ridiculous. In rural Virginia, you got Republicans having to do the same thing. So this is an effort to try to allow them to attend their political meeting, whatever party it is, without it being deemed an illegal meeting. I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you for bringing the bill. And it does have a limitation that people can go to their political committee if they can't discuss. Let me say that again. it does have a limitation on line 40 that even if they're going to their political committee meeting, that's fine as long as they don't discuss or transact any public business. So it's just for political business the way I read it.
Well, that is the way I read it, and that. So I think it's okay if a constituent asks you a question. You didn't go there with the intention of conducting county business, but I hope that if the Supreme Court looked at this statute, and it's partially why I'm saying what I'm going to say, and if a constituent asks you a question at that meeting about something that's happening in the county, you could answer that. Because, if those of us here said, I'm sorry, I can't answer you, we probably wouldn't get reelected, and we ought to afford the same opportunity to the local supervisors as well. So I hope that's the way they interpret it.
Thank you. Are there other members of the, I believe Delegate Rome had a question?
Senator Rome.
Senator Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for the Senator. Mr. Chairman, I would ask the Senator on this case that, would he agree that when you go to a political party meeting, that the business of the locality generally comes up for discussion?
Senator Evan, Senator Rome, I think that you're going to get questions from constituents and you should be able to answer them. But what we don't want are closed meetings where 5 Democrats or 5 Republicans get together and they plan strategies. So the way this is drafted, the meetings, they're not set up to transact public business, but I think you've got the leniency to answer your constituents' question. That's the best way I can answer this question.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question.
Senator Rome.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would ask the Senator here, if this is going to end up actually having the inverse effect of the desire here, which is you don't want a bunch of local elected officials all discussing public business at an event like this, and basically allow the guise of a political meeting, a political party meeting, to facilitate them being able to talk public business without any accountability. So, Mr. Chair, my question to the Senator is, does he share that concern that by doing this, this is actually going to encourage more of these local elected officials to go into a room and hash out issues of public business without there being a quorum counted and without there basically having the same requirements that we currently have?
Senator Rome, I don't think so. I think right now you've got a lot of committees violating the law and they're having illegal meetings. I think what this says is you can go there, you can participate in your meeting, but you cannot organize these to discuss public business. And I think that's what it clearly says. What I said was this: I hope that if the Supreme Court reviews this, they wouldn't view answering a constituent's question as violating the statute. I think this exception is really clear that you can't go there to transact public business or you would be violating the law. It's one thing I've been practicing law for 30 years, both on most of it as a defense attorney, some as a prosecutor, but is one thing I've learned, that if there's somebody in the public that hears something, they're going to tell it. And that ultimately is the point, right? We don't want to have closed meetings where people are strategizing, except in our own caucuses. We don't want to have closed meetings where supervisors can strategize without the public hearing what's going on. And so, no, I think the bill works. It was vetted very thoroughly in the FOIA Council, and I think it had a unanimous vote, Senator Block. Yeah, it did.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions from members of the committee, I'll ask if there is a motion.
Move the report. Second.
Or I don't think I took public comment.
You did not.
Those in favor and support of this bill, please come forward. Any opposed? Okay, here we go.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Megan Ryan with the Coalition for Open Government. With all due respect, I actually believe that this is already covered by existing law. I don't think that this provision is needed. And he's right. People who are going to want to get around it are going to get around it. And there are those localities that are essentially, all Democratic or all Republican, and they're going to talk about it if they're at one of these meetings. But for those localities where it's not so clear, this is what we're trying to make sure doesn't happen. And I think that existing law does tell them that they shouldn't, 3 or more of them shouldn't be transacting public business.
So the wording of it's not the word, you said you believed it was already covered. Do you object to the wording of the bill or the concept or both?
I don't think it's needed at all.
So you think that three or
I
more...
think you can strike it.
You think that 3 or more public officials of this could go to their political meeting if they're not discussing public business?
Correct.
Currently, you believe that. But the FOIA Council, I guess, disagreed with you if they recommended this bill.
The FOIA Council disagrees with me on a lot of things these days.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Are there questions for Ms. Ryan? Okay. Any other folks want to express opposition or support for this bill? Okay. Is there a discussion?
Move to report.
There's a motion and a second to report. Unless there's further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Okay, I see Senator Deeds is here. Senator Perry, if you could bear with us for just a moment, I want to get Senator Deeds, if I could.
I've just got a couple of bills, Mr. Chair. The first one is 426, and it essentially codifies a budget amendment error I carried.
Mr. Chairman, so this is a bill that was in gaming sub and passed by for the day, and it's up to you, Mr. Chairman, as to whether you want to hear it. Or send it to gaming sub, and we can take it up next week. It's up to you.
Well, let me ask this. Is there anyone here to oppose this bill in the room?
It essentially just codifies the budget amendment that we put in the budget 2 years ago. It takes a small portion of the historic racing money and sends it to the equine industry. I think I've got some people here from the equine industry.
Okay, well, since you have witnesses, let's go ahead and hear it in full today.
And what it does is it takes a quarter of 1% of the state revenue from the historic racing fund and puts it into the equine industry, the veterinary school, the horse center. That's all that it does. And that's why the bill says it has no fiscal impact, which has kind of surprised me because but the fiscal impact is already covered in the budget. It's already part of what we have. We're just trying to codify it so we don't have to be on edge about it every year. And I do have a couple of people who want to speak.
Thank you. If you'd like to come forward and identify yourself and tell us about this bill, that'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Hannum. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Equine Alliance. The Alliance represents all of the racing and breeding interests in the Commonwealth. So as the Senator said, this is a cleanup bill which codifies language that's already in the budget, which takes a percentage of HHR money and directs it to the Horse Industry Board, the Vet School, the Horse Center, and the Breeders' Fund. So this isn't money from the Commonwealth. This is money generated by the HHR machines, which have been instrumental in revitalizing the horse racing industry in the state.
Okay, and it also dedicates a very small portion to the Problem Gaming Treatment and Support Fund, and that's the current practice as established through the budget?
Yeah, so the language that you have before you is the language that just came over directly from the budget, so we haven't changed any of the percentages.
And when he says HHR, he's not talking about Health and Human Resources. He's talking about historical.
I know you'd like it to go to Health and Human Resources also, since you chair that subcommittee. Yeah. Okay, are there questions from members of the committee? Senator Rum.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I have a question for the patron on this. Would the patron be able to tell us two things? Number one, the budget that you're referring to, is that the governor's introduced budget that we're working on right now, or is that the existing budget that's covering through the end of FY24?
That was language that we put in the budget. It started as an amendment I carried in the 2022 session. It's carried forward since then. It's part of the existing budget.
Great.
We're just trying to make sure that it stays there.
Okay, and a follow-up question, Mr. Chair.
Rum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would ask the Senator in that case. Right now, where does that money go to? Is it just going to just a into the general fund as a whole? Where is the exact target for it now? What's it currently funding versus what this is now telling us is going to do?
0.025%, and it currently funds the Virginia Breeders Fund, the Virginia Maryland Regional College of Veterinary Medicine, which is down at Virginia Tech, the Virginia Horse Center Foundation, the Virginia Horse Industry Board. It funds those things right now. So we're not changing the use, and the Problem Gaming Fund, we're not changing the use of it at all. We're just putting it in the code with this bill.
Thank you.
Move to report.
Okay, there's a motion to report and a second. All in favor. Unless there's further discussion, the committee will vote.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, thank you. And Senator Deeds, you have another bill?
Thank you so much. Yes, I've got another one that'll probably generate a little more excitement. Senate Bill 584. The whole idea here is to establish the General Services Board to oversee the administration of the Department of General Services, and among other things, to give that department the ability to appoint a chief administrator for the department. This reorganizes the agency as an independent agency to better serve all branches of government equally. It maintains consistency from one administration, which is only 4 years, to another for basic government functions, including procurement, state real estate and buildings, capital project construction, and a variety of other central services to state agencies. The board will consist of 9 members with an appointed mix of 3 gubernatorial appointees and 6 legislative appointees. 1 non-legislative citizen appointed by the governor, 2 non-legislative citizens appointed by the Senate Committee on Rules, 2 non-legislative members appointed by the Speaker, 1 department head or agency head appointed by the Senate Committee on Rules, serves as ex officio. 1 department or agency head appointed by the Speaker serves as ex officio. 2 department heads or agency heads appointed by the governor who serve as ex officios. It transfers the appropriate responsibilities from the governor to the General Services Board or the General Services Board Chief Administrator. It maintains the appropriate governor's supervision, supervision of executive branch agencies related to their procurement and capital outlay. This bill is just providing consistency with respect to the General Services Administration, it kind of adheres to a lesson that I learned long ago from a fellow named Hunter Andrews, who served in this body, who said, governors come and go, but the General Assembly is forever. We need that in this basic function of government, which is the maintenance of what the public sees as government. We need to have consistency. We need to have stability. We don't have it right now. That's what this bill is about.
Thank you, Senator, for the explanation. Are there questions from the committee for Senator Deeds before we hear from witnesses? Okay. Are there those here today in support of this legislation who'd like to speak? Okay. I see Secretary McDermott's here. Would you like to comment? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. And thank you, Senator Deeds, for the opportunity to speak with you about this bill and get a little bit more background as to what really is precipitating this bill. So I appreciate that conversation. We oppose the bill, and for several reasons. The first one is that the bill itself amends over 50 different sections of code. It's very complicated. The complexity of the bill reflects a myriad of the functions within DGS, but also I think could be perhaps simplified a bit such that it's understandable. We are very happy to work with the patron and any member of the legislature to review the DGS functions, what's working, what's not working, get a better understanding of what it is that you all are intending for this to do. DGS does serve 86 government agencies. It is a service to agencies. It's not public-facing. We do not believe that the board structure is the proper structure. The unique functions within DGS, it's everything from a consolidated lab that does newborn testing, COVID testing, works with hospitals and institutions, construction of large, complex projects, not just on Capitol Square, but throughout the Commonwealth. Operations and maintenance of state facilities, janitorial services, building services, statewide procurement, as the Senator mentioned, vendor management, statewide leases and property management across the entire state. So we feel that a governing board, which would meet monthly, is not sufficient in managing this type of an agency. The board would need to understand this myriad of functions and also maintain operational day-to-day knowledge of those functions in order to provide oversight. And finally, on a personal level, we want to make sure that the DGS organization, all 700 employees, vendors, contractors, understand and are not faced with the uncertainty of this particular bill. So as we work through it together, I'm more than happy to communicate effectively. They're working on significant projects that we can't afford to have delays for, and I'm not sure that I do understand the budget impact of perhaps delays in those projects as the organization goes through what could be significant change.
I think Senator McPike has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd ask the Secretary, in our Finance and Sub, just last week, Capital Outlay Sub, we discussed several projects that the General Assembly has authorized, but there's been no action to date.
Correct.
On planning, and you indicated that there was going to be some follow-up to that, and I think this is in related action to directives in our budget and past that the agency is taking zero action on and zero updates to the General Assembly. Can you speak to that, please?
The DGS agency, Senator?
Yes, for Mr. Chairman, to clarify for the Secretary, it is, I believe, the 7th and Main project. There's other planning projects that have not been endeavored to date and no action taken. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, Senator, I'm not sure of the action that's been taken. We are now demolishing that building, and that money is being used. Pardon?
Senator McPike.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We had a pretty healthy discussion in Capital Outlay last week about the status of projects and actions that the General Assembly is required of the agency to do that have not been undertaken. And there was also requested follow-up on what those were. I know I haven't received it. I don't believe other members of that finance sub have received it. But I think it's relative to this discussion. And so we'd like some answers.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McPike, I will be happy to get you those answers.
Thank you.
Okay, were there other members of the committee with questions? Okay. Any other witnesses who'd like to comment on this bill particularly? Okay, with that, if there are no questions for Senator Deeds, is there a motion?
Move to report and re-refer to finance.
Okay, there is a motion to report and re-refer to finance. Second. In a second. Unless there's discussion, we'll go ahead and vote.
Ayes 9, no 6.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Senator Perry, thank you for your patience. What's your bill?
I believe I have two bills this afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to take them in whatever order the committee prefers.
Whichever one you'd like first. I see you've got 215 and you've got another.
Sure. I'll take up 215 first.
Okay. So we'll draw our attention to Senate Bill 215 and Senator Perry.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this is Senate Bill 215. It relates to the provisions of the Freedom of Information Act. This bill in particular deals with the release of files, who can request files here in Virginia. Currently, as the law stands, there are a number of people who can request files. These are criminal investigative files. If you turn your attention down to 2.23706.1 subsection D, this bill adds a single line to it, and it allows that people who are not citizens of the Commonwealth can now request these particular files that are then laid out. Nothing about who the people who qualify to request these files has changed. They include the victim of a crime, the victim's immediate family members, if the victim is deceased, the parent or victim or guardian of a victim, and then basically an attorney in very limited circumstances who is representing someone on post-conviction proceedings, pardon proceedings. I have spoken to a number of people about this bill. The Sheriff's Office, Virginia Association of Sheriffs, and other people who initially had some concerns about the language surrounding the bill. I think most of their concerns had to deal with just generally the feeling that there would be a large increase in the number of responses they would be required to respond to and things like that. But after some conversations about the limited nature of this and how many numbers of people we think would be engaging in this, those concerns seem to be relieved. And so the intent of this bill is certainly is most directly to allow, as a prosecutor, I've had several victims, usually of crimes like stalking and things like that, who move out of state. And as a result of this bill, of this amendment in particular, they would be able to request their investigative file even though they don't live here anymore. I know some other people have raised concerns. What if there's an ongoing investigation? What if there's a perpetrator out there and that file, that person's listed in this file? Those protections that have always existed or have existed in FOIA for some period of time to protect those files continue to exist under this amendment. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Senator. So just to clarify, this is has the same guardrails or restrictions for release of criminal investigative files as with an in-state person. If there, for example, if there was a tragedy and there are two victims and one of their families lives out of the state and one of their attorneys or descendants or their attorney lives out of state, it would allow the out-of-state attorney or the out-of-state surviving parent or family member the same access as if they were a Virginian?
Actually, just their family members. It wouldn't for their attorney. The attorney is number 4. That prescription is actually very, very narrow in my opinion. Representing a petitioner in a petition for writ of habeas corpus or writ of actual innocence or other federal, state post-conviction proceeding or pardon. So the need to respond to the FOIA in that way would be limited to those essentially post-conviction proceedings for an out-of-state attorney. Otherwise, it's just limited to the victim's family. Section 5 does include other people, but those are when you come up and you have to in-house review the file, and so I'm not, I think that's a lighter lift in terms of FOIA responses.
Okay. Are there other members of the committee? I think that Senator Rouse had a question in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Perry. Can you just, does this come at the recommendation of the FOIA Council? Or do they have a position on this?
I haven't spoken, I don't think I've spoken to the FOIA Council on it. This comes about as, I think as a result of some of the work that I've done, that Senator Serval has done in this space, trying to make sure that people can access these files.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Senator.
Would they, I would love to know where they stand on this, since this is the area where they, view and discuss FOIA information. Someone is here from FOIA? Okay, great. Mr. Chairman,
we'll hear from the witness.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Underwood, Senior Attorney with the FOIA Advisory Council. This bill has not come before the FOIA Council, so there's really no position to offer you at this situation.
Have they had okay, so they haven't seen it?
Can you, I know it hasn't been reviewed by the council, but okay, so you can't express an opinion.
Can't express.
Okay. Are there others here in the audience in support of SB 215? Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Megan Ryan with the Coalition for Open Government. To make one reason this really wouldn't have to go before the FOIA Council is because it's correcting a problem that it was sort of manufactured, in that FOIA does not prohibit out-of-state requests to be responded to. It allows them to be ignored, but it does not prohibit it. The Supreme Court did say, you can have this provision, but you don't have to ignore anybody's request because it comes from out of state. So in my opinion, it's egregious for someone to deny a victim their their record simply because they are out of state, because they can respond to that. They can give that victim even if they are out of state. So they are making a choice. They are interpreting FOIA in a way that is not open. And so to address Senator Rouse's question, when we're trying to correct the bad application of a law, sometimes those proposals don't go before the FOIA Council.
Senator Pillion has a question for you as well.
Not for her.
Oh, do you have a question for the patron or so? Okay.
So, Senator Perry, or Mr. Chairman, Senator Perry, you said that the Sheriff's Association was opposed to it, but now they have a neutral position now. Are they here to say that?
I don't know that they are. I guess not. But I have texted and talked extensively with John Jones and Stacey Kincaid out of Fairfax to address these issues, multiple phone calls, multiple conversations, to make sure that we were all on the same page.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. If there are no other questions, are there any other people here to express their opinion on SB 215, either here or those who had signed up previously online? Okay. So is there any motion or further discussion from members of the committee?
Move the report.
Okay, we have a motion. Senator Rouse, did you have a comment?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Senator Perry, again, I'm not a FOIA person or to fully understand this. I think it's a really good bill. But I also like FOIA to have a determination, just to have the opportunity to look at it, so have a position on it. I'm not going to vote against your bill, but I just will abstain.
Thank you. Okay, there was a motion to report.
And re-refer to finance.
And re-refer to finance. Yeah, it was requested by finance. And there's a second from Senator von Valkenburg. So unless there's further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote.
Okay. Ayes 13, no 0, 2 abstentions.
Thank you. Okay, and you have one other bill, I believe?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The next bill is Senate Bill 648.
Move the substitute.
There's a motion to adopt the substitute, and do I hear a second? Okay, so all in favor of adopting the substitute will please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the substitute's before us.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 648 is a bill to support the delivery of fire and emergency medical services across the Commonwealth. When citizens of 911 call an emergency, they expect emergency response, both from fire and EMS, to be properly prepared with needed resources to mitigate their emergency. As a result of legislation passed by this body last year, a stakeholder work group came together over the summer to survey Virginia localities on fire and EMS needs. After receiving an 87% response rate from localities, the survey indicated that the vast majority of fire departments, volunteer, career, and combination departments all struggle with two main challenges: recruitment and retention, as well as the purchasing of heavy apparatus. Over the past 3 years, call volume increased by 40%, and the cost of a standard fire engine has increased from $500,000 to $1.2 million. That's a 109% increase. At the same time, state pass-through funding increased by only 6.67%. Senate Bill 648 creates the Virginia Firefighting Personnel and Equipment Grant Program. The grant program would be administered by the Department of Fire Programs. It requires a local match, and the funds could be used to recruit and retain career or volunteer firefighters, convert part-time or volunteer firefighters to full-time, acquire firefighting and EMS vehicles and equipment, and modify facilities. In today's times, quality fire and EMS response service cannot be shouldered by localities alone. Demands are high. Call volume is up. Residents and visitors of the Commonwealth deserve high-quality fire and EMS service. It's good for business and quality of life. So I hope that the members of the committee will be willing to partner in these critical services. I can tell the members of the committee this bill is supported by the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association, the Virginia Professional Firefighters, the Virginia State Firefighters Association, the Virginia Association of Governmental EMS Administrators, the Virginia Association of Volunteer Rescue Squads, and the Virginia Fire Prevention Association. I'm happy to take questions.
So this is really just codifying the extra $2 from the vehicle registration fee that's been in the budget for a number of years and directing it to this grant fund? Is that's correct? Or can council just, okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay, are there questions from members of the committee for Senator Perry? Is there witnesses in support of this legislation? Okay, I know we have one person who wants to speak online, but why don't you come forward first, sir, or the folks in the room first? So why don't we just say 2 minutes for each side, if we could?
Mr. Chairman, just to add our Virginia Association of Counties to the list of those in support, and thank the patron. Thank you.
Thank you. Please join us. And I said, if you're here to support, introduce yourself.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, good evening. I'm Alan Baldwin. I'm the Deputy Fire Chief for York County's Department of Fire and Life Safety. But I'm here this evening speaking to you as the President of the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association, representing our 1,000 members throughout the Commonwealth who lead our Commonwealth's fire service. The Commonwealth's fire and emergency services are at a critical crossroads and are facing many challenges. A recent survey of the Commonwealth's emergency services showed several challenges, but two were identified as the greatest. There were recruitment and retention, as well as a high cost of equipment. This is driven by the fact that over the past 3 years, as you've heard earlier, call volumes have increased by 40%, but pass-through funding from the state has only increased by 6.6%. The cost of equipment has increased substantially. The cost of a pumper back in 2002 was $591,000, in 2024, in excess of $1.2 million. There are no state general fund dollars to go towards fire and emergency services, just two small pass-through fees. A surcharge of 1% aid localities money on insurance premiums, which mostly supports training for the Commonwealth's emergency services. A fee of $6.25 is added on to vehicle registration to support EMS operations in the Commonwealth. The survey also showed that there's a large amount of apparatus that needs replaced. We have communities that are operating apparatus in excess of 20 years old, some even approaching 30 and more. EMS agencies that are operating and fire service EMS divisions that are operating ambulances in excess of 10 years old.
If you could wrap up, we've got 30
No
seconds
problem.
left for the group behind you.
We'd ask that you support Senate Bill 684 and establish a grant program administered by the Virginia Department of Fire Programs so we can continue to protect the critical assets, the visitors, and the people that work and live in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would ask the folks behind if you could just identify yourself and state your support unless there's something that you need to add urgently.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jennifer Pike with the Virginia Professional Firefighters, and we strongly support this legislation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Vance Cooper, Deputy Chief, Virginia Beach Fire Department, and member of the Virginia Fire Chiefs Association. We're in support of the amendment.
Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Keith Andes, President of the Richmond Professional Firefighters Association. We wholeheartedly support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Ed Rhodes. I'm representing the Virginia Association of Volunteer Rescue Squads, governmental EMS administrators, the Ambulance Association, and the regional EMS councils. We support the substitute bill, but Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring Spencer Willett from Department of Fire Programs up to
Spencer, if you'd like to join us.
Clarify the funding stream.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, Spencer Willett, Department of Fire Programs and the State Fire Marshal's Office. A point of clarity is the 425 to 625, that exclusively funds the Office of Emergency Medical Services, which is found under the Department of Health. So the Department of Fire Programs does not receive funds from that. So this fund, I think, would be a separate fund aside from that 625 as far as we are aware. We are funded from 1% on 5 lines of insurance, so your homeowner's insurance, marine insurance, and some others. That's what funds fire programs and the current grant funds that we are able to provide to localities. So we don't have a position on the legislation, but I did want to clarify that for the committee.
Okay, thank you. And I believe we have someone online who's been waiting to testify as well. Let's hear from them briefly.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Keith Johnson, Fire Chief in Loudoun County and also past President of Virginia Fire Chiefs. I support the establishment of the grant fund bill, that's Senate Bill 648 by Senator Perry. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any in the room to testify against this legislation? Okay, if not, is there discussion or a motion from members of the committee? There's a motion and a second. A motion to report and refer to finance and a second. So unless there's further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote on the electronic voting board.
Ayes 9, noes 4, 2 abstentions.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Okay, our next patron is Senator Williams Graves. Okay, well, why don't we let her know? What we'll do is we'll take up, I think Senator Pillion had some witnesses from out of town. Why don't we take up that bill while we wait for Senator Williams Graves, and we'll, after that, we'll hear from her.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, draw your attention to Senate Bill 621, which creates a commission on artificial intelligence to advise the Commonwealth on issues related to artificial intelligence and make recommendations to the governor and the General Assembly. We know that AI is complex and constantly evolving here and across the nation, and it's definitely here to stay. Senator Locke, as well as Senator Hashmi and myself, attended the Southeastern Regional Education Board meeting last year where we discussed AI and what other states were doing and decided at that point that something needed to be done more aggressively in the Commonwealth. So in August, I engaged the University of Virginia Center for Politics and had them do some research for us, and they're here with us today and have been here since we were in session. So I know they're happy to testify in just a moment. Fully understanding the capabilities of AI, good and bad, is essential to building a market and regulatory landscape in Virginia that's both responsible and responsive to emerging economic, workforce, public policy, and privacy considerations, just to name a few. And you'll see lines 60 through 76 of the bill outline specific priorities of the Commission, which include studying the impact of AI on the workforce and strategies to prevent discrimination through the use of AI, potential options for regulation and use of AI within the private sector, creating a definition of AI, and developing ethical principles for the use of AI, considering a definition for AI, considering guidelines and or restrictions for the collection, use, and sharing of personal information. The bill has an expiration date of July 1st, 2027. At least a dozen states have already taken this same approach of establishing commission and task force, convening a diverse body of individuals for the purpose of understanding the opportunities and risks associated with the promulgation of AI. This is not an administration bill. It is my understanding the governor's recent executive order is limited to actions and strategies within the executive branch. The commission that would be established under this bill, in my opinion, would have a broader scope, particularly within the specific charge of coming back to us with potential legislative recommendations across a range of issues. And like I said, there are some witnesses that are more than excited to testify and get on their ways back to Charlottesville.
Well,
including a member of the Pillion household.
I heard.
So let me advise you, if this bill goes down, so does fatherhood for me. So, yeah.
Well, we'll be happy to hear from the students based on their research. I did just want to ask one question. It says the purpose of the commission on line 19 is to advise the governor on issues related to artificial intelligence and make advisory recommendations. I'm wondering if you'd want to add the General Assembly, since later in the bill it says that the annual report would be delivered to the General Assembly as well as the governor.
I would consider that a friendly amendment.
Okay, so that would be a motion from Senator Reeves on line 19, seconded by Senator McPike, to add the words "and the General Assembly" on line 19 after the governor. Is that, council's got that? Okay. So why don't we, unless there are questions for Senator Pillion, why don't we hear from the students?
Great.
Oh, we need to vote. Okay, this is a motion to amend the bill. Is all in favor of that would say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Before we question Senator Pillion, let's hear from the students. They might be able to save his bill. Welcome.
And this is not my daughter. She's over there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator Pillion, and the committee. My name is Etienne Willette, and I'm a fourth year as well as a graduate student at the University of Virginia studying public policy. Over the past 6 months, my peers have been researching artificial intelligence and its uses, benefits, and threats to the public. In working with Senator Pillion in his office and in speaking with experts as well as researching model legislation from other states such as New York, New Jersey, California, Texas, Tennessee, and others, we settled on the proposed commission approach reflective of the successful commission system utilized at the federal level by the Department of Defense in navigating their use of artificial intelligence. This commission allows for bipartisanship and civilian membership, which enables greater expertise. This approach also allows for broad implementation while recognizing both the risks and value posed by artificial intelligence. Additionally, considering the speed at which this technology is developing is dangerous and difficult to regulate it strictly, especially given that we do not yet fully understand its potential. Lastly, we want to highlight that we have been working on this legislation for around 6 months, since August, and this legislation will be complementary to the Governor's Executive Directive, which focuses on Commonwealth agencies, specifically those agencies' use of artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence use in all levels of education. Also, lastly, it's important to note that the commission, as proposed, reports to both the governor and now the General Assembly more broadly. So in summary, this legislation does not seek to be overly prescriptive while still ensuring privacy and maintaining or mitigating potential harms. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Do we have another witness, or is that from Center for Politics? Or
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Are we sure there's not anybody of Abingdon, Virginia realm that's available to speak today at all? The decision of this bill could depend on the answer.
I think the class determined who would be speaking for them.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Rouse.
I have a question.
Please proceed.
I have a question for your witness. It's not every day I get a Wahoo student in front of a Virginia Tech Hokie, so I like to. Yeah. Oh, it used to be. Oh, that's even worse. He used to be a Hokie. I just like to ask him a follow-up question on artificial intelligence, if you will. Just one simple question. Thank you. And does UVA students use artificial intelligence to do their homework?
Be honest.
Only when advised to.
Only when good answer.
When
Okay.
the syllabus says so, we do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No more questions.
Okay, so if there's further questions for Senator Pillion, we can hear them. Otherwise, if there's a motion, the motion would be to report and refer to finance. Okay, there's a motion and a second to report and refer to finance. Senator McPike?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just one thing to notice is travel. How many senators are being appointed to how many House members in this bill?
Equal representation. If you would like to offer an amendment, Mr. Chairman, Senator McPike, I would be glad to do that. But I also would like to get this bill through both chambers.
I'll defer to the chair of rules, who also happens to sit on this committee.
I like your bill.
Okay, so that's an endorsement. So I heard. Did I hear a motion to report and refer in a second? Okay, to finance. Okay, so all in favor will please vote aye. Those opposed vote otherwise.
Okay. Ayes 15, no 0.
Thank you, Senator, and thanks to the students for being here today. Okay, now we've got Senator Williams Graves, I believe, has arrived. Thanks for your patience today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's start with Senate Bill 526, please.
Okay, we'll direct our attention to Senate Bill 526 or
26. 526.
This is with the Resale Disclosure Act.
Yes, please. And we have a substitute, please.
Okay, there's a substitute to be adopted. Do I hear a motion to adopt the substitute? And a second? Okay, all in favor of adopting the substitute, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the substitute is before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Last year, this body passed the Resale Disclosure Act, which brought all laws relating to the mandatory resale disclosure of a property within a common interest community under one statute. Since the law was enacted on July 1st, 2023, there have been some items in the new law that need clarification in everyday practice. The substitute on the bill would add amendments that did not get made during the amendment timeframe and the stakeholder consensus language. First of all, this bill would clarify where a seller or purchaser's agent can perform the actions required in the act, like order and update a resale certificate. The language will also clarify that a purchaser cannot waive their right to receive a resale certificate from the seller. The associations have asked for the mandatory disclosure for cooperatives, a co-op, in the resale certificate, and the change to be reflected in the actual business practices. Stakeholders have also come up with some compromise language on how payment for the financial update that is ordered right before closing is handled. The exemption for providing a resale certificate in the case of new construction has also been clarified. Finally, with the new law, there is no longer a prohibition on the waiver or variance by agreement of the parties of the termination period after receipt of the resale certificate. The language in the statute still refers to a 3 to 7 day termination time frame. This has caused confusion in practicality in the industry, and this bill would take that language out and make it clear that the termination time period should be decided in the contract between both parties. In the case that no time period is defined in the contract, the purchaser shall have a termination period of 3 days. There are a lot of technical changes here. The Realtors Association and other stakeholder groups are all in agreement with this, and we do have folks here who can provide expert testimony and answer technical questions.
Thank you. Is there a representative of the Realtors who'd like to speak? And anyone else who's in support, please come up towards the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Erin Corman with the Realtors would like to thank the Senator for carrying this bill for us. She explained it perfectly. It's really just a lot of tweaks after the law went effective July 1st, and we saw it in practice. Some things need to be clarified. I'm happy to answer any questions about any of those changes.
And the main one that caught my attention was the if someone doesn't deliver the resale certificate right away, what happens?
So what happened in the law that went effective July 1st was the language that has been in the law previously that said you cannot waive or vary by agreement the termination period was removed. So now the seller and the buyer are allowed to negotiate that termination period how they want. But unfortunately, the language that referred to the 3 to 7 day period was still in the law. And so it was very confusing whether it was 3 to 7 days or whether they could decide on their own. We did have a request to clear that up. So basically, the language that's in there now just says the buyer and seller can come up with the termination period. This explains when the clock starts running. And if they leave it blank in the contract for some reason, it'll default to 3 days.
Okay, so we're really cleaning up and clarifying in this bill. Okay. Are there others who want to speak in support of this bill? Okay, anyone against this bill? Members of the committee have questions or motions? This bill is 526. No, it's not been requested by Finance. Okay, there's a motion to report. Is there a second? Did I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, so unless there's further discussion, please vote on the electronic voting board. Senator Craig. Okay.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, thank you, Senator. And you have another one, 521, I believe?
Yes, Mr. Chair, 521. Senate Bill 521 defines declinable pre-need funeral guarantee fee as an optional and declinable fee agreed to by a pre-need funeral contract purchaser if offered by a seller for which the cost of the supplies and services as described in the pre-need funeral contract are guaranteed. The bill describes certain requirements that must be met for funeral service licensees to offer declinable pre-need funeral guarantee services. The bill directs the Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers to adopt emergency regulation to implement the provisions of the bill. This bill contains an enactment clause. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 521 regarding pre-need funeral services and the ability to guarantee these agreements so that a person's wishes about their funeral service can be carried out financially without further distress to their already grieving families. Whether the desire of the person purchasing the pre-need agreement is for burial or cremation or any other type of disposition, this last act of care can be expensive, and fulfilling the wishes of a dearly departed when already overwhelmed with their loss is often a very emotional process. A person who pre-plans for this eventuality of their own death is giving a gift to their surviving spouse, children, and other family members. In 2021, well-intentioned legislation was patroned and passed by this body that removed pre-need insurance companies' requirement for growth through the life of the insurance policy that secured pre-need contracts as part of a pre-planned funeral service and disposition. Prior to that, Virginia required that the growth be tied to a CPI or 5% index, whichever was greater. To be fair, Virginia was one of the last two states that still had such a requirement. We do have stakeholders here as well as other groups to answer any technical questions.
My understanding is that the funeral directors are in support of this.
That is correct.
Could they come forward, or others who want to speak in favor of the bill? Hi, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Angie Bezick on behalf of the Virginia Funeral Directors Association, and we support this bill, and we thank the senator very much for her willingness to bring this forward.
And can I ask if under this bill, are the contractual terms inflexible, meaning that there's some non-declinable fees, like the basic service fees and overhead costs of the funeral home, that's embedded in the contract?
So when they go through the process of a pre-need agreement, there are about 35 things that are listed, and they get priced at that time. And some of those things will increase in cost towards the end, but
over time.
Yeah, over time. And one of the example that I have provided and sent to you, and I based it on a personal situation in 2012. We had a loss in my family, and the entire process cost about $11,500. Through the inflation at the end of 2023, it would have been over $15,000 for that same service. And so what they're trying to do is help hedge that and be able to guarantee that what the person who is trying to plan is doing, the funeral director will guarantee with this fee.
I see. Thank you. Yes. Are others who'd like to endorse this legislation or speak to it?
Sure. Real quick. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bo Keeney, representing the Association of Independent Funeral Homes of Virginia, and we support the legislation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Scott Johnson, representing Services Corporation International. They're the Dignity Funeral Homes and Cemeteries in your district. We support this.
Thank you. Are there questions from members of the committee or any in the audience who would like to express opposition to the bill? Okay. Are there, Senator? Okay, we've got a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 521. Please indicate your preference on electronic voting board.
Ayes 14, no 0, 1 abstention.
Okay. Then, did you have another bill?
Yes, I have Senate Bill 513.
513, I believe was said. This is for transportation protection agreements and the funeral services.
That is correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Senate Bill 513 defines transportation protection agreement as an agreement that provides for the coordination and arranging of all professional services related to transportation of human remains or cremated remains beyond the distance stated in the pre-need contract. The bill clarifies that transportation protection agreements are not considered pre-need funeral contracts. 513 deals with the funeral service licensee who serves customers with pre-need contracts and other funeral arrangements. Virginia laws governing pre-need contracts need to be updated and modernized. Pre-need funeral contracts involve sales to customers prior to death for funeral services or funeral service arrangements when death occurs. In recent years, funeral service licensees have begun providing customers with the option to purchase transportation protection agreements. These agreements address the relocation of remains for a distance over and above the areas that are specified in the pre-need contract. For example, if the decedent passed away in another state or another country, a transportation protection agreement will trigger to relocate those remains to the funeral service establishment after death as the distance the remains have to be transported would exceed the distance in the pre-need contract. Transportation protection agreements are separate and they are not part of a pre-need funeral contract. Virginia does not have a definition of a transportation protection agreement in the code, and this legislation would add a definition and clarify those agreements are separate and not part of a pre-need contract. And we also have expert witnesses to answer any technical questions.
Thank you, Senator. Before we hear the motion, just want to clarify, this allows for basically insurance if you were to die quite a distance from home, that your remains could be brought to comply with the rest of your pre-need contract.
It is not insurance. It just simply separates out the contract for the pre-need. So, for example, if someone had a pre-need contract in Norfolk, Virginia, and they passed away in Pennsylvania, the contract for transportation of their remains from Pennsylvania to Virginia is a separate contract from their pre-need contract, and this simply separates that out and defines what a transportation contract is.
Okay, and if I could ask Mr. Johnson, is that a distance-based? In other words, if someone were to pass away in Pennsylvania or California, would it be based on how far away they were, or is it just covered?
Mr. Chairman, generally in your pre-need contract, it will say something to the effect if you pass away more than 70 miles from the funeral service establishment, you need to be given the option if you want to buy this protection agreement. And so it's in the pre-need contract, it'll say 70 miles, then this transportation agreement covers everything above it. So you can be in England, you can be in Kentucky, you can be across the state. It will bring your remains home.
Wherever in the world you
Yes,
are,
sir.
for the same
Yes,
amount that you've contracted for.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Okay. Do members of the
Mr. Chairman?
Senator McPike?
Yeah, would this prevent like weekend and Bernie's or assist with weekend and Bernie's sort of situation, or Mr. Johnson? I'm just kidding.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the senator's question.
Okay. Very wise not to answer it. Okay. If there are no other questions from members of the committee, we'll entertain motions for Senate Bill 513. Move to report and a second. So we'll vote on the electronic voting board. Senate Bill 513.
I'm staying. Explain that one on the floor.
Okay. We're going to thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Okay, we're going to turn to member bills. I'm going to present one first and turn over to Senator McPike, and then other members can get in the queue after that.
All right, Senator Evan, you have Senate Bill 576.
Yes, Senate Bill 576 would ban what what many are calling unfair service agreements, or real estate agreements that are binding for longer than a year, claiming to run with the land or otherwise bind future owners of the property through the use of liens, encumbrance, or other unfair restrictions on the property. The bill would protect homeowners from predatory real estate service agreements where homeowners sell the exclusive rights to list their homes to a real estate company for an extended period of time. I noticed some articles in the Washington Post after I heard at the NCSL from AARP about people who actually go door to door in different states and offer homeowners sometimes as little as $300 to sign onto contracts that can be binding for up to 40 years. And the American Land Title Association and AARP identified at least 25,000 service agreements in 32 different states, I believe including Virginia, between real estate brokers and homeowners done in exchange for exclusive listing rights to the homeowner's property, with the homeowner receiving a small one-time cash payment. And I worked with the AARP and with the Virginia Association of Realtors on this legislation. There's more that I could tell you about it, but I think it might be better just to invite the witnesses to describe it and say that there was a Post article, I think it was November 20th in the Washington Post, about D.C. suing a renovation company called Curbio, saying it's devastating for homeowners that the city sued a home renovation company that claims to increase home price sales but traps district residents into financially devastating contracts. If you want a contract with a realtor, you should be able to, but you shouldn't be locked into doing this for a 40-year period. We've had other legislators pass similar legislation, including North Carolina, and unanimously in both chambers, the North Carolina legislature under Republican control, signed by a Democratic governor. And 15 states in total have all enacted legislation protecting homeowners from these predatory real estate service agreements. And if I could, I'd like to just hear from the witnesses briefly, if that's okay with you.
Thank you. Those in favor of Senate Bill 576, state your name, organization.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jared Calfee with AARP Virginia. Senator Evans did an excellent job describing the legislation. I would note that close to 700 of these agreements have been recorded in Virginia, so this is something that is happening here, and what he described is accurate. Someone could go door to door, offer a small amount of cash up front for an agreement to, list your property with this real estate company, and then they record this agreement with the title, so it's binding to the land. So you pass away and leave your house to a child, they don't even know this agreement is there. They sell the property, they can come and penalize you up to 3% of the value of the home for not having listed with them. That's why 16 other states have banned these. I won't list them all, but Alabama, California, Florida, Utah, all over the place, all across the political spectrum, states are addressing this, and we expect more to come soon. This is obviously very predatory. A lot of older Virginians and older folks across the country have been taken advantage of by this. We appreciate Senator Eben for bringing it forward. We appreciate the realtors for working with us on the language, and hope it will be the will of the committee to pass it.
Great, thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Erin Corman with the Realtors. We want to thank the Senator for working on this bill with us, and the AARP. Virginia Land Title is also a supporter. They couldn't be here. Happy to answer any questions. Sorry,
Great.
I just ran all the way from upstairs.
Good. Thank you so much. Any opposition to Senate Bill 576? Any questions from the committee?
Move the report. Second.
It's a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 576. Please cast your votes.
Ayes 15, no 0.
All right, next up, Senator Locke. You've got two bills. You have Senate Bill 36 and Senate Bill 50.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's take Senate Bill 50.
We've got Senate Bill 50 then.
Senate Bill 50 deals with the eviction diversion pilot program, which was enacted in July 2020 within the general district courts to provide a solution to Western Virginia's high eviction numbers. The pilot program is within the courts of 4 localities: Danville, Hampton, Petersburg, and Richmond. And what this does is extends the expiration of the eviction diversion pilot program 1 year to July 1st, 2025, and this comes as a recommendation of the Virginia Housing Commission.
Okay, so this is an extension of our existing program?
Yes, by 1 year.
Okay, and I'm just looking at my notes to see if this has not been requested by Finance. So are there questions of Senator Locke?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there anyone in the audience who has a burning desire to slow down this fast-moving train? Okay, if not, we'll vote on the electronic voting board.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, and then I believe you have another bill, Senator Locke?
Yes, Senate Bill 36.
Move the substitute.
And there's a substitute.
Okay, so there's a motion to adopt the amendment in the nature of substitute. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the substitute is before us.
The substitute for Senate Bill 36 makes the legislation identical to a draft that the FOIA Council approved in December. The legislation seeks to remedy the repercussions following the recent Gloss versus Wheeler case. And if Senator Rouse will wake up, this actually did go through the FOIA Council. Gloss versus Wheeler created a new definition of public business. A topic is, and it stated that a topic is public business if it is pending before the public body at the time or is likely to come before it in the foreseeable future. The ruling will now require public bodies to have more advanced planning and more notices to the public for neighborhood meetings and civic league meetings. Under the ruling, a topic is considered public business if it's pending before the body, meaning an item is on their agenda or is likely to come before them in the foreseeable future. It narrows the listening-only exception. And I'm bringing this for the city of Hampton. Hampton has a very active council where council members frequent neighborhood civic league meetings, Chamber of Commerce events, tours, etc. And under the ruling, it would require not just notice, but also minutes, then approval of the minutes and more advanced planning that isn't always possible and is logistically difficult. The legislation before you today amends the definition of a meeting as it relates to clarify that a gathering of 2 or more members of a public body is not a meeting if there is no discussion of transaction of any public business by the members of the public body, and that certain educational trainings are not meetings subject to FOIA. Meredith Jacoby, Assistant City Attorney with the City of Hampton, is here to answer any specific questions, and she can also detail how the City of Hampton has had to grapple with the ruling of the case locally.
Ms. Jacoby, thank you for being here. If you could come forward. Is this what we would call the Christmas party bill, that 3 members of a local legislative body would be uncomfortable even attending the same holiday party or something?
Yes, you might call it that, Senator Evans.
Okay, well, that's what I call it.
Yes.
We could call it the Hanukkah party bill, New Year's Day bill, whatever. But do you have more you'd like to add?
I'm available for questions, as Senator Locke said.
Okay.
Other examples that the City of Hampton has encountered is Peninsula Chamber of Commerce speaker meeting has become difficult. Lots of civic league meetings, tours of historical artifacts. It's become very logistically unwieldy. And this bill will put the state of the law for FOIA pre-Gloss versus Wheeler, where there was already existing clear language for what is a public meeting and when council members or other public body members may be present, receive information, ask questions.
Okay, thank you for being here. Are there others who want to speak in favor of this legislation?
If I could,
Senator.
Mr. Chairman, I've had city council members tell me that they've had to draw straws to determine who's going to go to what meeting, because 3 of them couldn't go to a particular civic league meeting or to any particular meeting because it would be constituting a council meeting.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Please come forward and state your support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Phyllis Arico with the Virginia Association of Counties, and we support this bill. We think it takes care of an issue that affects all public bodies.
Thank you. Okay, are there those who wanted to express opposition to Senate Bill 36 or had reservations? Thank you. Come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and the wonderfully esteemed Senator Locke. We were happy to support the original version of this bill. In fact, we are the ones who offered some of the clarifying language on that. We're even willing to accept the additional language on lines 40 through 46. We don't think it's necessary, but if it helps, give some comfort, then we're for it. But the definition of public business on lines 66 through 67 is very troubling to us. And that is because that phrase, public business, in this bill is defined with respect to meetings. And that definition may be perfectly fine with respect to meetings. But if you go down one line from the definition of public business, you'll see the definition of public records. And in that definition of public records, they use that exact same phrase, public business. And what we never had a chance to discuss at the FOIA Council was what impact this definition would have on the definition of public records. So let's fix the meetings portion of this, but we would like for the portion of we would like that definition of public business to be sent to the FOIA Council for further study so we can make sure it's not otherwise impacting the definition of public records. This was an issue that was raised I had discussions with the attorney who originally offered this language, and it was also raised by the Associate General Counsel of UVA in a letter to the FOIA Council expressing the same exact problem. So,
and I assume that you'd be uncomfortable even if we were to pass this bill and ask the FOIA Council to give us any needed updates next year. That you would oppose that process?
No, I'd be perfectly willing to study this over at the FOIA Council.
I'm suggesting that we actually, if we were to pass the bill but still write a letter to the FOIA Council asking them if they need any updates for next year as an interim position.
I suppose so, but I do worry about what impact it would have on records. If I could give you an example, say the governor gave James City County a report on maybe labor statistics or something like that. Right now, I could go to James City County and ask for that under FOIA, and I would get it. Under this definition, I'm not sure that we would get it because it talks about whether something has been undertaken or proposed to be undertaken. The county hasn't undertaken anything regarding those labor statistics. So I'm not sure if that would be released or not. And that was the point that the General Counsel, Associate General Counsel for UVA made was, and he's going to interpret it as narrowly as possible to keep as much as he can.
Well, maybe I should ask counsel. The bill on line 68 has a definition of public records already. Right. So would those not still be FOIable? Okay.
And
maybe the FOIA Council would want to answer that. I don't know if they can.
If you don't
Yes.
mind, I think I can.
You could comment on it, sure.
So the definition of public records, if you see at the very end of the line, it says prepared, on line 71 and 72, prepared or owned by or in the possession of a public body or its officers, employees, or agents in the transaction of public business.
I see. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for members of the committee? Senator Rome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, a question for council regarding line 66 and 67 for public business. Do we have another definition of public business anywhere else in the code? Or so this would be completely new?
I believe, yes, Senator Rome, that this would be completely new.
Perhaps might I offer to council, it says in the bill, in the substitute, public business means activity the public body has undertaken or proposed to undertake. on behalf of the people it represents. If we were to change that to say public business includes activity, would that not make it a little bit better? So would that, I'll ask Senator Locke to consider if that's a friendly amendment while we hear from Ms. Parent-Siebert. Would you like to speak, Amy?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Amy Parent-Siebert on behalf of the Virginia Press Association. We have the same concerns as Megan Ryan does. I mean, we really think this is actually a pretty big change because we've had no definition. We've just sort of known what public business was. So actually going ahead and defining it, we always have the danger of when you define it, leaving out other pieces. And I think the public records part is a really big implication as well. And so we, like her, would prefer that section to be struck out and have a letter sent to FOIA to look at that and work over the rest of the year. But we support the rest of the bill and think that's necessary, and we totally understand Hampton's problems, but we think they're addressed in the rest of the bill. So
would you be more comfortable if it said public business includes activity that a public body has undertaken or is proposed to undertake on behalf of the people it represents, meaning that's not the sole definition, but it includes that?
I mean, I would hate to be able to say that I support that. I mean, I think it might make it slightly better. I feel like it's tough to do this on the fly. That's kind of our point. We sort of feel like this is a really big It's a big deal to define public business, and we would rather take some more time to do that.
Okay. Senator Locke, on your substitute where it says public business on line 66 means activity that a public body has undertaken or proposed to undertake on behalf of the people it represents, would you be comfortable if we changed it to say public business includes activity? Just changing the word means to includes?
I would have to check with the city of Hampton.
Okay. Are there any other questions from members of the committee?
So, Senator, the definition of public business in the substitute bill, lines 66 and 67, is borrowed from the dissent in Gloss versus Wheeler. So that phrasing has an existing legal interpretation that's not existing in a vacuum. So the city would not be comfortable with changing it to include.
Okay, you prefer it as is.
Take it away.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McPike.
So maybe to perhaps illustrate legislative intent, if the patron it's my understanding that is not your intent by including this definitions in line 66 through 67, that it would somehow subdue the definitions under public record in the following section. Is in fact your intent that public business in this sense is still wide as it is today in terms of the example provided earlier in terms of the government papers coming in and giving hand delivered to some member of council during a presentation and otherwise, that would still be foiable. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We have the bill before us.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Rome.
Mr. Chair, would it be possible for, I don't know if it's to council, to patron, or to whom, if we could get what Senator McPike just said to basically somehow be included as a friendly amendment in there, just to make that point clear?
Council, would you be able to interpret that, or do you want to? Senator McPike, could you repeat what you were stating as the legislative intent that you wanted to clarify?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
What I'm making sure is that as we're contemplating this as a body, that if court looks at this and looks at this record, we are not saying by passing this based on this definition that somehow because you're at a meeting and some other party as a part of that somehow doesn't include public. It is, and I think it's my intent. I think it's this body's intent that it is in fact public business based on the example given earlier, and therefore the documents would be foiable.
So do you think we could construct a sentence to add to the bill to clarify that, or Senator Rouse, do you have an attempt at that?
I don't want to interrupt I don't want to interrupt Senator McPike's flow. So if he has some language, I'd greatly hear it. But serving on city council as well, you have a public meeting or public business. There usually has to be a quorum, or there usually has to be a record of it. So to me, how I read this, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's any records would be accepting as it is public business. I just feel like we're pulling hairs, but I understand the concern with the language. I don't have a problem with it. So if Senator McPike maybe have some language he want to offer, but I just think we're pulling hairs.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator McPike.
What I think might be the best posture is I think that certainly this what I'm feeling and hearing is that we don't want to cause harm to any of that excellence. However, we understand the intent. And so what I'd like to see is that we adopt a change in concept, and I've discussed with council for a follow-up amendment or substitute, depending on the exact language to be worked out. But I think I'd be comfortable with moving this forward and recommend that the bill report with an amendment in concept.
Let me ask council, can we do that, or would it be easier to just bring it back next week with that sentence if we agree that we want the bill in general with the clarification stated by Senator McPike?
Mr. Chair, it's up to the committee.
Okay. Senator Locke, would you mind if we brought it back next week with the understanding? We could take a poll right now. How many people on the panel would be supportive of this bill with that clarification, would want to see it next week before it goes to the floor? As opposed to going to the floor without seeing it first?
I'm fine with it
As it is. Okay, then let's.
Motion to report.
Okay, there's a motion to report with a amendment in concept. I'd ask the council, could you prepare that in the next few days so that the people from the Open Government Association could see it before it's on the floor?
I believe Senator Rouse had a different motion.
He did.
I'm sorry, what was the motion?
Mr. Chair, my motion is report as it is.
And that's my second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 36 as presented in the amendment in the nature of a substitute. All in favor will, unless there's further discussion, all in favor will vote aye. Opposed will vote no. Okay, that bill reports. Okay, thank you. That completes Senator Locke's presentation, and then who's got a? Senator McPike had one more. Okay, and then I'll take a list here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Senate Bill 244. And Mr. Chairman,
okay.
Senate Bill.
Let's direct our attention to Senator McPike and Senate Bill 244.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 244 would validate all lawful and local government actions made in virtual meetings in good faith compliance with the Freedom of Information Act during the COVID-19 state of emergency from March 20, 2020 to July 1, 2021. This bill does not change the existing language in the code. It adds an enactment clause to 3708.2 that provides retroactive protection for those who obtained and relied on local government approvals that were granted in virtual meetings during the state of emergency and otherwise be compliant with FOIA. In Berry versus Fairfax County, the Virginia Supreme Court ruled that actions taken by local governments in virtual meetings during state of emergencies were void in that those actions were not essential. The Supreme Court determined that Fairfax County violated the Freedom of Information Act and the Commonwealth's electronic meeting statute and voided any actions taken during the virtual meetings, which included Fairfax County's comprehensive planning zoning overhaul and update. While Fairfax County has since readopted those updates, the Supreme Court's ruling has called into question actions taken in electronic meetings during COVID in jurisdictions all across the Commonwealth. Land use approvals accounted for many of these actions, and this legislation would provide retroactive protection for the development community and others who relied on the good faith actions of local government during this period, Mr. Chair. That is the bill, and it has gone through and been reviewed also by the FOIA Council.
Thank you, Senator. Are there questions for Senator McPike before we hear from any witnesses?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reeves.
Senator McPike, I know we tapered back the amount of time that the governor can keep us under emergency restrictions before we come back to the General Assembly. Does this fall in line with that amount of time as well?
Mr. Chairman, it's a little bit difficult to hear, but I believe you're asking about the period. This is the period of time specified of declared emergency that these provisions fell on and were subject to the Supreme Court's opinions on it.
Oh, specific to that case.
This is
specific
previous,
to that period.
Yeah,
Okay.
This is in the state of emergency that's ended, that actions taken during electronic meetings would be validated, so to speak, if that's the right word.
Yes.
Are there those who would like to speak in favor of this bill? Please come forward.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Phil Abraham, representing the Virginia Association for Commercial Real Estate. We thank Senator McPike for bringing this bill. As he mentioned, this simply provides protection for those people who relied in good faith on local government action during the chaotic period that was COVID. No one had any idea at the time that a FOIA violation could actually void the government action. This was the first time that the Supreme Court had made such a ruling. So we would appreciate your support for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Clark with the Home Builders Association also support the bill. I'll add it's from what we've looked into, not just a Fairfax County issue, but we found Richmond, a couple localities in Hampton Roads, Greene, Albemarle. It's really an issue that I don't think everybody knows the full breadth of impact, but definitely something that could be detrimental to a lot of economic development projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Megan Ryan with Coalition for Open Government. We helped work on the language that got put into the budget language that gave them some grace, and we thought that we were acting in good faith at the time, and we understand their need for finality because everyone thought we were going to die if we met together. So we support the legislation.
Mr. Chair, Phyllis Rico, Virginia Association of Counties, and we support.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Claudia Arco with Fairfax County, and we support this as well. We think it's a good clarification. Thank you.
Amy Parent-Seibert, on behalf of the Press Association, we support it. We think this is the right way to go, too. So thank you.
Thank you for being here and stating your support. Okay, are there any opposed to Senate Bill 244, either in person or anyone who's been waiting online to speak? Second. Okay, there's a motion and a second to report Senate Bill 244. All in favor, please vote aye. Opposed, vote otherwise.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, we've got just about four more bills, and Senator Aird had asked to present hers on use of artificial intelligence by public bodies. I understand there's an amendment to this bill, to Senate Bill 487. Is that right? There's a fifth one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. That's correct. Ultimately, it just adds a delayed enactment clause of July 1, 2025.
Okay, was the amendment reported? There's a motion and a second for the amendment. All in favor of adopting will say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, the amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Again, before you is Senate Bill 487. And Mr. Chairman, ultimately, as a Commonwealth, we've already, from a wide lens, adopted the use of artificial intelligence. You've heard about that a bit earlier with Senator Pillion's bill, and so I'm hoping this is a complement to that. This is just the first step in applying some consistent guardrails with our use of this technology, so to ensure that we don't do any unintentional harm, if you will. And so the bill does three things specifically. It defines artificial intelligence. It requires that we develop, publish, and maintain policies and procedures concerning the development, procurement, and implementation of these technologies. It also makes sure that they do not use anything that would be the result of unlawful discrimination. It requires public bodies to perform impact assessments relative to the development of those policies. And lastly, for public bodies to report on the use of these systems. And so again, we've already added the delayed enactment clause to ensure that our public bodies have an opportunity to conduct a assessment of their systems before having to apply the regulations that would be developed. So I would ask for the committee to support this approach.
And under your bill, this vests some responsibilities with the CIO for the Commonwealth?
That's correct.
Okay. And further, your bill has a delayed enactment becoming effective on July 1st, 2025. Is that right?
That's the amendment we added, yes.
Okay. I think that's important because if we have any fine-tuning to do, we'll have a whole other session to do it, and everyone will be on notice that this will become the policy of the Commonwealth. Are there any questions for members of the committee? There's a motion. There's a motion and a second to re-refer to finance, but let's see if there's anyone in the audience in support of this legislation. Anyone against this legislation in the audience or online? Okay, so the motion was to report and re-refer to finance, and we can, I believe we can vote on the electronic voting board.
I'm serious. Which way should I do it?
Okay, thank you, Senator. And then Senator von Valkenburg had asked to present his building code bill, which is Senate Bill 195.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So Senate Bill 195 kind of continues a conversation around building code. And just some kind of context for this, right, is we know that we have a housing shortage in Virginia. Axios ran an article a couple weeks ago that showed that the average first-time home buyer in Virginia is now age 37, and that's up 7 years over the last decade or something like that. People are increasingly not able to buy homes in our Commonwealth, and we know that it's a variety of reasons. Some of it's zoning, some of it's the regulatory process, some of it's the building code. It's a little bit of everything. And this bill is a stakeholder group. This bill is not changing anything in the building code, but it's related to single staircase because we know that the requirement that once you go above 2 or 3 floors, you have to have 2 staircases, reduces options for density, reduces options for affordable housing. I want to emphasize that one reason why it's a work group outside of we're not legislating the building code is that we want to do it correctly and safely. We want to make sure that we're still including safety requirements. We want to make sure that we're doing it in the right way. But we know, and there's increasing evidence, that by going to a single staircase, we can have more housing. And that's important. That's increasingly important in our region here in Central Virginia. I know it's been important in Northern Virginia. And because we have been here a long time, I'll just close by saying that even if we were to accept the recommendation, which is to go single staircase for 6 floors, okay? So even if we went through the study, even if we went through the whole building code process and they eventually implement single staircase for 6 floors, we would still have a more restrictive standard than the following countries: the United Kingdom, Australia, Belgium, Poland, Norway, Spain, Israel, Austria, Denmark, Sweden, France, China, Singapore, Germany, and Italy. Italy has single staircases until 25 floors. Singapore has single staircase until 20 floors. And in Europe, those countries all have less fire than America. They all have less fire damage and fire death than America. So we know we can do this. We know it can be affordable. We need to do it thoughtfully. We need to do it respectfully, responsibly. That is the bill. I will stop there because the day is late.
And I'd point out that this is for a stakeholder group to give us a report by December. It doesn't mandate that we will get rid of the current rules, just really that stakeholders will weigh in and that we'll get an informed judgment.
Yep.
With that said, is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak in favor of this? If you can be really brief, you're okay. We've got a motion to report what? Oh, we've got one online waiting to speak in favor or against.
Chair, members of the committee, this is Keith Johnson, the fire chief in Loudoun, speaking on behalf of Loudoun County, who is opposed to this bill. The purpose of multi-stair configuration is to allow 2 stairwells in case one is compromised. Typically, in a fire situation, one is used for evacuation, the other stairwell is used for fire activities to bring that. Imagine yourself 6 stories in the air with only one way to get out, and that stairwell is compromised. You're really forced to do 2 things: one, burn, or jump. One of the 2. In reference to the other countries have different manufacturing standards and, quite frankly, build their buildings out of different products, where in the United States we mostly use wood. This is a dangerous bill that would compromise safety. I appreciate the argument of affordable housing. We all look for affordable housing, including myself, for our workers. But I can't compromise safety for the affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there those in the audience who would like to speak for this legislation? Please come forward.
Just very briefly, Mr. Chairman, Barrett Hardin with the Commonwealth Housing Coalition. This bill is really about infill housing and the ability to build more housing in those areas where geometry is a limiting factor. And again, just a study where we hope we can balance the safety measures with affordability. Thank you.
Alex Horwitz, Director of Housing Policy at the Pew Charitable Trusts. In support, Seattle adopted single stair in 1977. The fire track record has been very good. Evidence shows that units with a single stair configuration are closer to the exit because of the central staircase. And the track record on fire deaths in the two big cities that have adopted single stair, New York City and Seattle, are both excellent, matching the data described by the Senator in Western Europe.
Thank you.
Chairman, members of the committee, Wyatt Gordon with Virginia Conservation Network. We are in support of this bill by allowing housing to be built on smaller lots, which tend to be in towns and cities. This allows us to reduce the amount of sprawl by being able to concentrate housing in already built up places. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Clark with the Home Builders Association. We also do support the bill. It is not legislating the building code, as many of you have heard us talk about before, but bringing together stakeholders. I think Chief Johnson raises some valid points that I think were considered when places like Seattle and a few others have adopted this. So I think through that stakeholder process, it's not going to prompt a building code change, but bring together fire professionals who know a lot more than us on fire safety and see if there's middle ground or see if there's not, but try to look at expanding housing options by not just zoning and land use, but really building design, which has kind of stayed functionally the same for a long time. So I think it's just a good opportunity for us to kind of convene and see if there's middle ground. Thank you.
Can I ask you, currently, what's our limit for how many stories above grade plane for?
I believe it's 3 above grade plane, and depends on. Yeah, I believe it's 3, and it depends on what's on that third floor, but generally I think 3 stories. That's why you see some of the 2-over-2 condos that get pretty high are sprinklered. And so I think, there's probably a lot of different ways to mesh this together, and that's the building code process brings together officials, fire officials, and builders to kind of talk about those issues.
Mr. Chair, Randy Grumbine, representing the Virginia Manufactured and Modular Housing Association. We agree that this is worth studying. We've seen some creative designs and effective uses in other places in the country, and it's worth vetting that out.
Thank you. I think we've heard from all the witnesses who wanted to speak. Is there Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would ask the patron if on line 13, next to advisory group, in light of what the chief had to say, just if he would consider a friendly amendment to that says advisory group, including, which as we already know does not limit to, but just including firefighting professionals, just to make sure that they are explicitly included in the advisory group.
Mr. Chair, sure. I think that plan was for them to be included anyway, but we can make it explicit. I'm fine with that.
So there's a motion and a second on line 13 to add after the word advisory group, including firefighting professionals.
Yep.
All in favor of that amendment will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Council, you've got that? Okay. So now we have the bill before us as amended for Senate Bill number 195. Senator Craig?
Yes, just for the patron. So this bill will go to the study and then be brought back next year for us to support, or how does that?
There would be a report on it. I mean, I'm not trying to legislate the building code. It's trying to push people to solve an issue that's possibly solvable, that we know has worked in other places, that we know has increased supply of housing. Not going to come back with a bill to legislate the building code, but trying to foster a dialogue to push us in the direction we know we can probably go if we put our heads together.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for this. I like that we're studying it. We're going to bring all the stakeholders, because that was my concern about the safety. So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have some concerns with it. I'm going to likely abstain for the purpose of holding off comment, but having been one to been in burning apartment buildings, typically the tactics we use is to have escape stairwells, people coming out, use others for ventilation, and it's tough when you have 60, 70 pounds worth of gear, bottles on your back, and people flowing against you, and you get a high-rise back on. It's damn near impossible. And so I'll abstain from this one and see the study reports, but I'm hoping it also includes fire tactics and fire ground tactics, because it is extraordinarily difficult in dark smoking conditions and heat and people coming at you, while you're also trying to go mitigate whatever's occurring in that facility. And so I've been in high-rise fires with seniors and other issues. So we're assuming that everybody on that top floor is mobile. Guarantee it's not whatever Murphy's Law is going to happen, and you're going to have mobility issues. You're going to have lots of other challenges with whatever happens. And single staircase is tremendously tactically prohibitive and dangerous. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. Is there further discussion or motion on Senate Bill 195? There's a motion to support as amended. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 14, no zero, one abstention.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Okay, thank you. We've got 3 more bills left. Let's just, Senator Subramanian, you want to present your, okay. This will make next week less painful to get these done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is another AI bill. This one just directs JCOTS to study the issue, and it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm happy to walk through details of it. If the approach we took earlier was to have a commission, happy to merge with that, or if it's better to have JCOTS look at it. I used to sit on JCOTS in the House. And I know that this is something that it's considered looking at before and looked at different aspects of. But generally, I work a bit in the space and have done this type of policy in the past. And I'd like to see us both look at the dangers and and have caution, but also not stifle the development of the technology. I think we can, rather than just looking at regulating the technology, let's look at regulating the behavior and the use of the technology, and I think there's a way to do that. And so I appreciate the other legislation that's been put forward before the committee, and happy to take the advice of the committee.
There's a question about the difference between your bill and Senator Aird's bill. Senator, okay.
Hers is dealing with prohibitions on AI.
Yeah, Senator, maybe council can just tell us a little bit about the difference between the prohibitions in Senator Aird's and the study in Senator Subramanian's.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Aird's bill creates the different commission instead of directing it to JCOTS, and has more limitations on it than the JCOTS study does.
Okay, I'm just thinking, if we were to take both approaches, if it's duplicative, or if we can entertain both approaches, if there's any conflict. Yes, Senator Van Valkenburg.
Yeah, this maybe for council too, right? But essentially, this bill would just be giving us some directions that agency could go, that they could follow based on having more information, or that we could follow up on having more information, correct? Okay.
Well,
I can make some amendments.
Is there other questions from members of the committee or comments?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Aird, thank you.
Jesus. It's late. Mr. Chairman, Senator Suhas, I just wanted to clarify whether or not, oh, Jesus. Let me just ask my question. I am just trying to clarify whether or not this also ensures that JCOTS has the additional expertise to take on the challenge of reviewing and studying AI advancements.
Okay, there's a question about the bill being here and not in rules. Obviously, we talk about technology a lot in this committee, but the Rules Committee is generally where we have JCOT studies. So we could take several actions, one of which would be to refer to rules, so it could be considered in terms of the limitations of the total number of JCOT studies that we adopted.
I'd be happy to make that motion.
Okay. Is that agreeable with you, Senator? Okay.
I move that we refer to the Rules Committee.
Okay. So there's a motion to re-refer Senate Joint Resolution 14 to rules. And a second. Unless the Senator has a comment, we'll vote on that. All in favor, please vote aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have, I believe we have bills from Senator Rome. Keep in mind that if the brief for the presentation might be a better result. Okay, is that one the Family Cemeteries SB 281? Okay. So I understand there's an amendment in the nature of substitute for Senate Bill 281. Or an amendment? An amendment. Okay, all in favor of the adoption of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So if you could direct your attention to 281.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the members of the committee here. While this is being passed out, I'll just give you a little bit of a brief background here about first the amendment. So the amendment here on line 42, what this will do is it'll add, for the purposes of this subsection, the property of any church or religious association, denomination, or body, and then it'll say owned or leased.
So it's a technical amendment.
Yeah, basically it's a technical thing. It's to align it with a previous version of this. This is at the request of the Catholic Conference. Jeff Crusoe is here to speak on behalf of that part, if need be. And so I believe the amendment's been adopted, so...
Yes.
Okay, great, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So SB 281 would allow families to gain interment rights at family cemeteries by providing proof of kinship to those interred. I bring this bill up to you because in my district there have been 3 historic African American and Native American cemeteries which have been sold to private buyers, and because of this, descendants of family members buried here have lost the ability to access these cemeteries and put their family members to rest with their ancestors. This is something that directly affects the community of Thoroughfare. Long story short is we presented this bill in the House each last 2 years. Last year it got to 3rd reading on crossover day and then was very politely sent back to committee with a very brief explanation of something came up and we would like you to continue working on it. So I worked with Delegate Coiner, who's a land use attorney, during the off season, and we now have peace in the valley. I have no known opposition to this. We should be good to go.
Okay, is there anyone from the funeral industry who wants to speak in support or sign off on this?
Any against?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Amy Parent-Saber on behalf of the Virginia Cemetery Association, and we worked with the delegate, the senator last year when she was a delegate, and all the changes that she had in there last year are in this one, and we are perfectly fine with it, so we appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone against this bill in attendance who wanted to speak?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion, a second, to report Senate Bill 281. All in favor, please vote yes on the electronic voting board. Opposed, vote otherwise.
15, no zero.
Okay, and now we're up to the final bill, which is Senate Bill 324.
Okay.
I understand there's an amendment in the nature of substitute that you've prepared.
Yes, there is, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'll first entertain a motion to adopt the amendment in the nature of substitute.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor of adopting it will say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's before us. And I'll just note this bill, if it's successful, the motion would be to report and refer to finance. And does the clerk have a hard copy of that amendment in the nature of a substitute? Maybe Senator Rome could explain that to us.
Yeah, we have to.
Thank you.
So let me know when you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
So, Senator, why don't you we heard a little bit about this bill, the original version of the bill, but why don't you tell us just about this version of the bill from scratch?
Absolutely. All right, so first, we struck so upon a request from Senator Rouse asked us to go from monthly to annually, so we were happy to make that accommodation. And what we did is VACO had raised the issue that that the original version of the bill was allowing for 96 hours in a year of free FOIA requests. I've now dropped this down to 1 hour for one request once a year. If anyone can't comply with that, that's not a Code of Virginia problem at that point. Next part. What we've also do is we had a back and forth with Michelle Gowdy from VML regarding the actual fee. As introduced, the bill was $33. She has to go to $50. We put it at $40. $40 is what the revised Colorado rate is anticipated to be July 1st of this year. So we're at least still building on some form of existing precedent for this while giving a little bit more leverage to the larger localities where they said that they were going to have an issue with this. Now, also included is an exemption for attorneys of school boards, counties, cities, towns, and Office of Attorney General. That said, that's a part I would like for us to have a little bit more discussion about today to see if that part's even necessary. And finally, this bill does include a sunset clause of July 1st, 2025. It includes language saying that the localities need to keep actual data for how many FOIA requests actually come through in a year. And what we've also done is we took a bill from the other chamber, we slapped it on as an enactment clause of this one because there was more request for more study on this. And so you'll see from lines 144 to 165, those lines are that enactment clause for us to have another study. Now, as Senator Locke has presided before, we have studied this bill. This bill, we had an advisory, everything. I also understand what the will of the committee was, and so we tried to bring as many people together on this as possible. The sunset clause of next year is entirely designed for this study part to be completed. This way we come back, and anything that we need to change, we can do that. I have made a world of compromises and concessions on this, and with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
May I ask, on line 75 of the substitute, it says that there's a fee cap imposed by Clause 2 of Subdivision 1, that the Office of the Attorney General and any local public body, including local school boards, are exempt from the fee cap. What is the fee cap referring to?
So sure. So the fee cap in this case, where it says on line 65, where it says the $40 per hour, what we were proposing was basically that was if you needed attorney redaction coverage. However, my understanding, at least back in Prince William, the reason I wanted to talk about this section is that that was not necessarily supposed to be assigned as a FOIA fee to the requesters, and we're not sure whether that's actually common practice. So we asked DLS to basically take a look into the code, and I don't believe there was actually explicit mention one way or the other, and please correct me if I'm wrong, about whether that was ever part of the Code of Virginia regarding redaction or regarding assessing attorney's fees as part, or attorney time as part of a FOIA fee. And so, I mean, I would be delighted and happy to not include that section. At the same time, we have it in here as part of the.
But just for clarity, is that saying that on any request they're exempt from it, or only on ones where they're using lawyers to redact?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would just say that that's only in regards to if you need the attorney, the town, city, county, school board, or AG to actually review it for that purpose.
Okay, and just to clarify with counsel, so it's $40 an hour for the person fulfilling the FOIA request, but if they have an attorney involved, they can charge more for the hours of the attorney. Is that your understanding too?
Mr. Chair, if they have an attorney involved from the Office of the Attorney General, local public body, including any local school board.
Okay.
Not just any attorney.
Right. So
yeah, they're the attorney for those folks. Okay.
Right. So basically, lines 75 to 77, I'm not thrilled about including in here. If you all want to strike it, please, by all means, feel free. But at the same time, this is just part of a back and forth.
I think this is a really helpful middle ground for, and to have a year where we'll get a log of how this works out if in real life before it's sunsetting and we'd have to reenact it next year could be helpful. Are there, Senator Rouse?
Thank you, Senator Rome, for all your work on this and being so amenable to the amendments. I was just looking over the substitute, and I just didn't see where the annual, it went from monthly to annual. And maybe I'm just a bit tired, but.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would tell Senator that on line 57, where it says during a calendar year, 57 and 58.
The first.
Got it. I see it. Thank you, Senator Rome.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Rouse, you speak for all of us.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Senator Rome before we have two online people waiting to testify? They're at home.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So last week we postponed this for a week. I'm assuming we have somewhat, Mr. Chair, Senator Rome, we have peace in the valley now, or as close as we can get.
Mr. Chair, I would tell the senator that no, we do not have peace in the valley on it. This is, we had a hashed out discussion with negotiation, and various folks were trying to represent their constituencies to the strongest degree possible. And at the same time, I have made a lot of compromises. It did not get people to go from opposed to neutral or opposed to support. But at the same time, at the end of the day, we make decisions based as the committee and based on the product that's before us. And so that's what I have brought before you today.
Okay, we're going to ask the people online to speak first and to confine their remarks to a minute each maximum if they could. And to please be on camera, and they've been waiting patiently, so we appreciate their testimony.
Sarah McHugh, you can go ahead and unmute, turn your camera on, and begin your testimony.
Hello, I have a master's and PhD in public administration, and I just wrote a book on the use of AI in business for the United Nations, and it should not be impossible for someone who isn't a lobbyist or a lawmaker to track an issue, as I have been sitting here since noon to offer my opinion on SB 675, where there is interest in bringing casino to rescue.
Okay, we're on SB 324, ma'am.
On your constituent online option that I believe was only launched recently, it is not fair that I have been sitting here for 6 hours. Thank you for all that you do, but your online system absolutely needs to be much better. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, is the next person ready to comment on SB 324? We have a minute reserved for the next speaker if there's someone else waiting. That was it?
Move report and refer.
Well, wait, there are people in the room. Wait, we have another. Please direct your attention to the person testifying online.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jim Angeli. I'm Morrow County Commonwealth's attorney, and I wanted to report that VACA, Virginia Association of Commonwealth's Attorneys, opposes this bill as written. However, I've been listening to the discussion, and our concern is that attorney redaction is required when there are requests for criminal investigative files. And we would ask that we be included, as apparently the amendment provides, in the organizations that are not subject to the cap when attorneys are needed to respond to the request for information. In this case, I know that this committee discussed Senate Bill 215 and is familiar with requests for criminal investigative files. There's a huge amount of redaction that is required to protect the identity of victims, to protect law enforcement sensitive information, and a number of other things. These are specified in the statute. It's a rather unusual statute. It requires disclosure and then an exhaustive exemption review that can only be conducted by an attorney. So we would ask to be included in that relief from the cap. Finally, the last point I will make is that the General Assembly has already recognized the special nature of requests for criminal investigation, criminal investigative files in 2.23704B4, relating to how much time is to be allowed to respond. Public bodies have to respond within 5 days but if they need additional time, they're given 7 days, except in the case of requests for criminal investigative files, in which case 60 more days are allowed. That just emphasizes the amount of work and the complication that Commonwealth's attorneys have in responding to requests for criminal investigative files. So we would ask to be included in that exemption.
So if I understand correctly, sir, you're asking for Commonwealth's attorneys to be included with the Office of the Attorney General and others who are exempt from the fee cap for lawyers' time? Is that what you're asking, or are you asking for more than that?
No, that's it, exactly.
Okay. Senator Rome, did you want to react to that? Are you okay with that?
To be honest with you, Senator Evan, because Commonwealth's attorneys are duly elected in this case, I think these are not private contractor, more or less. And I get OAG is there because you're dealing with the state level, you're dealing with all the agencies. That's why we had a very specific thing for AG. I'm less inclined to want to include Commonwealth's attorneys on this. If they want to stop by my office in the next week or so and consider a floor amendment for the Senate, I will sit down and talk to them on this. But the fact that we're already doing this to begin with is, I don't know if Job ever ran for state legislature, but kind of feeling like we're getting hit from all sides on that.
Well, this is going to go to finance either way if it's successful. So you're saying you don't want us to add Commonwealth's attorneys today, that you would rather talk to them over the interim?
Yes,
Okay.
please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I see. Okay. Is there others in the room who wanted to speak to this bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, Megan Ryan, Coalition for Open Government, and we are very grateful to the Senator and to all the people who showed up at your instigation. And I think that we started down the road of a good conversation. It is my organization that asked for the study on the House side, and so that we think that it's a great idea to include that in this bill so that we can just get moving and start this really deep conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And another? Welcome.
I'll be brief. Good evening. Christian Martinez, Research and Policy and CASA, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion or motions from committee members? Yes, Senator Reeves.
I make the motion the bill pass. Does it have to go to finance?
Finance it goes.
And send it to finance. And if there's anybody that's more receptive and to have changes to their bill that'll work with anybody, it's Senator Rome. So I'd like to get the bill out of here.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to report and refer to finance the amendment in the nature of a substitute of Senate Bill 324. Unless there's further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote.
Aaron.
Was that AI speaking?
Aaron.
Okay.
Aaron.
Senator Rouse?
No, vote.
Senator Rouse, you're being called on to vote by your machine. Okay. So,
15-0.
thank you, Senator Roman. For anyone who's listening, I would just encourage the Commonwealth's attorneys to stop by Senator Rome's office to discuss further any changes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
The committee will rise.
The Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.